because a lot of people here have more to say than you can squeeze into a few sound bites. So,
can we say
very
that,
interested to see what happens today.
can we say like the journey was sort of a part of the essence of what you were exploring? The journey of people?
Yeah, just kind of mapping progress and alignment so that you can, it's sort of like profile building, but with purpose, like as you're doing it and keeping track of it, almost like a little game where, you know, flow chart, whatever. But yeah, you can track
Sam is with us.
your way through.
Hey guys,
Yeah,
sorry I am late, and I'm sorry to interrupt in the middle of something here. As you see, I'm floating above beautiful San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, so feeling pretty good today. Hey, I know you guys are probably in the middle of check-ins, but I just wanted to confirm. Swinder, you are on today, yes?
Thunder. Lightning is coming.
Am I not getting through?
No.
Yes.
No, I can't hear you. I couldn't hear
Okay,
you.
Jaswinder. Okay. Hey, there's Lauren.
Oh. Hey.
Hi,
Lauren's
Kayla.
done
Good to see
today,
you
by
again.
the way.
Okay, so I don't understand a thing you're saying, Jaswinder, but today is yours.
Why do you keep insisting on that?
Because you keep raising your hand and saying it's okay. Maybe.
Okay, okay. Silliness.
Just a thought.
Okay.
Okay, and did I hear Colin also? Colin's here also, so we have 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here in breakfast.
All right. Unofficial opt-in check-ins. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
I just wanted to say I can only be here for a little bit, but I just wanted to support you, Jaswinder, and see what you were going to talk about. So I'll just be here for a little bit, but I just wanted to pop in.
Please heckle appropriately, okay?
I didn't understand any of that, but carry on.
Okay. All right. So let's do the quick check-ins, opt-in, optional, and then let's give the floor to Jaswinder. I'll go first then. If anybody does.
Okay.
Please don't laugh at me. It makes me feel really insecure.
No. I wasn't laughing at you. We all do the same thing.
Okay. All right. So today and also last week, I've been, I would say, uncommonly productive at work. That's kind of sad to say. But anyway, lots of weeks of rumination led me to being really kind of productive this past week and a half with a very, very, very little prototype that I'm doing. My boss seems to say, hey, every other day he says, hey, why don't you give me an update on this and, you know, give a presentation to 20 or 40 or 80 people. So that's been feeling pretty good. So I feel really jazzed, which means I'm usually up at night because that's my most productive time. I guess I'm most productive from 3 a.m. to about 9 a.m. And then, you know, then I have to take a break, but that's usually what it's like. So anyway, that's me. I've been feeling pretty good lately with the dogs are coming up to their 2-year-old birthday party on Sunday, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to get together with the other puppies. So all the puppies are going to have a birthday party on Sunday. All right, that's it for me. I will relinquish the floor for check-ins.
As I was saying to Kayla, it's 6 weeks, 7 weeks of lockdown. It's about 23rd of March when we went into lockdown. And with 4 kids in the house and not much roaming around. Could have been 5, Lauren. Very lucky I am.
I know everyone who's stuck inside with kids has such a different experience. Like there are all these people like, oh my gosh, we just have so much time to think.
For the record, I'm having a great time with.
It's been very good for me. Sorry, Sam, interrupted you.
I interrupted you.
It's been very good for me to have 4 children in the house. just imagine if I'd have been on my own, I wouldn't have been doing anything at all other than pulling my hair out and just going to the shops and back is bad enough. You have to stand outside in the queue, and then you have to space yourselves, and there's people who forget things and they zoom back and break up the whole sequence. It's extremely chaotic lockdown procedures. And then I have to go to the school and bring their homework. In between, I became ill myself. And then I couldn't see or talk with anybody. I had to be isolated in the house. So bedroom, study, bathroom, study. I would go in the kitchen when everybody else left the kitchen. That was really, really bad. I could hear them and I couldn't cuddle them or hug them or anything. And they wanted to do the same with me. So it's much better than it was. And they've all gone visiting today. So they've decided to break the lockdown and go visiting, which may or may not be a good idea. I don't know. My daughter came yesterday and she's been posting all sorts of silly stuff on Facebook and Instagram. She's completely bored out of us. So I think that's sufficient checking. Whoever's next, carry on. Thank you.
I just want to say, for the record, I couldn't imagine having a better time with a 16-year-old daughter than I'm having right now. It's really pretty cool.
On that note, I'll check in. It was my son's birthday yesterday. He turned 9 years old last year for a single digit. He's my happy child, but he's also got way too much energy. He gave me this long list of things he wants just for his birthday. I'm having trouble homeschooling him in particular, just because he's all over the place. And he says I'm mean, and it's just not good.
Oh, my kids have never said that about me.
He says I'm not a good teacher and I'm not me, and I'm mean, so I'm just waiting for it to be over.
Wait, is that something he has said in the past, or this is the first time he said it?
This is the first time he said I've been very mean.
Wow.
I'm not a teacher. I'm a dance instructor, yes, but that's completely different. You know, I'm just not a teacher.
I've been accused of the same thing.
Yeah. You know, and it's different when it's your kid. I can't even teach my kids to dance because they don't listen to me. How many awards I've had and how many times I've been on stage, they don't listen. But
I'm
anyway,
shocked.
Yeah.
Shocked.
I can only say one thing. Wait till they're teenagers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But other than that, it's great. Having a good week. I had a date last night.
How did that go?
You know, I'm kind of terrified. I'm not ready. I think I need to be alone for a while.
I'm telling my daughters they can't date till they're 35.
There you go. I think that's a good plan. So anyway, I'm complete.
Next.
Oh, I've had a good day, and glad to be here, and we're just interested in seeing what comes up. So I'll just let it go from there.
Is that it, Glenn?
Colin?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. These headphones are questionable. I have to always check. Yeah, no, yesterday was a great day for me because our province raised the safety color to, I guess, yellow or orange or something, but that means that families can meet now. So I got to see my grandbaby yesterday, and that was a lot of joy. So very happy about that. Still thinking about maybe going back again in a day or so. So this will be great. So that's my check-in. Thank you.
And that leaves Lauren.
Oh, not much going on here. We started a new round for Kiko Lab, and so we'll be doing some interesting things. There was just, it was weird. We just had a round we did with Metacogs on crap detection. And it was really interesting because we're all in the collective intelligence, kind of like super educated, kind of really smart. And there was absolutely no agreement. I mean, it was like all across the board with COVID, like in terms of like sense making, is like, is this the most important thing that humanity has ever faced? Or is this like, is everyone just making too big of a deal out of it? And we couldn't even decide on that. So it's really like kind of disturbing. But,
What's your position on it?
I think it's going to end in a humongous clusterfuck for humanity. That's my personal. I mean, I think it will like bring about a chain of reactions that will be bad. Yeah. And oh, so I've also decided today that I want to start hosting collective intelligence roundtables in different languages. So I'm going to start doing it in Portuguese, Spanish, and French, and Italian. Yeah.
You speak languages? Wow.
Yeah, but I suck, and so they're going to be specially made to be slow, like easy Spanish, so that people can still participate if they're not like totally fluent, where we like put up pictures and make sure people understand. So it's like more, so it's not like fast, because then I couldn't follow. So yeah. So if you know anyone who speaks other languages, those languages, I'd love to bring them in, and so just let me know.
I speak 5-year-old Taiwanese. I speak like 8-year-old German.
Taiwanese. How is that language?
我講台灣話，你當聽有，你當咪曉講我講什麼？
Awesome.
That was
Yeah,
a stumble through some Taiwanese.
it's interesting to speak different languages. I only speak two. But
Well, Kayla probably speaks a different language, no? Yes?
I do speak Spanish, French. I understand Tagalog. I understand some Tahitian, Samoan, Hawaiian. But they're all elementary.
Yes, Magandaga Mega.
Oh yeah, I don't understand that.
That's Tagalog.
Oh, okay. Sorry. See, I told you.
That's out of left field though, definitely. That's beautiful morning, I think. Magandanga Mega.
Oh, Maganda. Maganda. Sorry.
Just what I pick up at work, so it's not solid.
That's okay. I switch.
All right, cool. Anybody else not gone? Anybody lurking that I'm not aware of? Or shall we turn it to Jaswinder to check in / then go into, please set the setting with what is your focus for today, and take on moderation, and I will just become a audience participant / heckler.
No, why would you want to heckle poor old me? That's not fair.
Everybody gets
That's
my
what
heckling.
kiddo keeps saying to me. It's not fair.
Oh, Jaswinder, you wait.
Oh, life is a wonderful thing, you know. People talk about fairness, and I'm just glad to be alive most of the time. It's very difficult to do things when you're dead. So I've been told. I don't know what's expected in moderation, so I'll just wing along, as it were. And I think in the last month or so, all of us have demonstrated a much more cohesive way of communicating and talking and putting a point of view across on all 3 or 4 platforms, which is extremely heartening. So I don't think I'm going to be doing much in the way of interrupting people or telling them anything really. And what I want to talk about, what's been on my mind for a long time, by that I mean well over probably a decade, is this theory or theories of how the universe started. And one of the things that I came across, lots of different things, but what I would like to put across now is a premise. The premise is that all processes within the universe, right up to us being here, are extremely repetitive. In other words, some processes spent eternities, and while other processes may have spent millions of years of repeating themselves to produce some sort of a progressive lineage to creating the ultimate being, albeit Homo sapiens. Now, we are all aware of the Big Bang Theory, and what I would like to talk about is what could have been there before the Big Bang Theory. And one of the terms one comes across is absolute zero, but there is a scientific definition of absolute zero. So it has to go down to just the one word, which is zero, nothing. And there are various descriptions of what this nothing entailed. There was nothing, and yet there was something. And this something turned inside out, etc., etc. And my premise is that when going back to when I was doing elementary biology and advanced level biology, comes down to the reproductive systems that exist today. And thankfully, there are only two, asexual and bisexual. Asexual predating the bisexual. In asexual reproduction, the organism just splits into two, which is quite simple. And it's very long-winded. It doesn't tend to be overly complicated, and it doesn't change much for eons. So going back to when there was absolutely nothing, what could this nothing do? And the only thing that comes to my mind after long, hard thinking is that it could split into two. It doesn't really matter how long that took. Eternities, who's counting? Time didn't exist. And splitting into two, it would split into four, and so forth till there was sufficient pressure generated, because it all clumps together, that it kind of starts to warm up, or even have a tiny little explosion. Or, as it's in one of the scriptures, I found that when there was something, it turned inside out. And that I came across in biology as well. When the cells dividing form a sort of a bolus, which is quite a nice ball, it turns inside out. As it turns inside out, the edge on the sort of the edge forms the backbone of whatever creature is forming. That is extremely interesting, that if the universe turned inside out, would it do the same? Would it become flat as it appears to be now? I don't know, but that's the process that's continuing. And it keeps on continuing. And to say that the Big Bang only happened once doesn't seem to hold true, as there are bangs going off all over the place, and universes fall into what are black holes ostensibly and appear somewhere else, and they completely changed. So it's a very rough theory that I'm putting together, And it also holds a lot of other items that need working on, kind of like what were the first atoms like? How did they form? How did the various particles come about? And they all come about obviously by smashing into each other. So all that has to be formulated. And it may be it's the wrong thing to talk about, or it's not exciting enough, but that's what I would like to talk about. And I'd like to open it up to any comments at this stage.
I have
Put
something.
in a short phrase what that topic is. Are you talking about like the origin of the universe? Would that be the topic?
I'm talking about succinctly what was there before, ostensibly, the Big Bang. There is no doubt that the Big Bang happened, but leading up to that Big Bang, there are several steps that have to take place for that Big Bang to occur. The one question that comes up time and time again is, where did the pressure come from?
Yes, exactly. I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Could there ever have been a situation where there are no events anywhere occurring? So, in other words, could there ever have been a situation where there was nothing and nothing moving anywhere, neither inner nor outer? So it was a total death of just no life whatsoever, no consciousness, no movement, just like nothing, absolute nothing. If such a situation had at any point existed, what would happen? Nothing. It would remain like that forever. But here we are. So does that mean it has to be some kind of endless action?
Yeah, your initial premise is very good. When the nothing existed on its own, it would have stayed like that for countless amount of time, lots of eternities put together. But eventually something would happen.
Why would something happen if there was nothing there?
Because if something didn't happen, we wouldn't be here.
That's my point. So
exactly.
Doesn't that indicate that therefore something has always been happening?
What the premise here is that everything repeats itself, all processes are repetitive. So when we look at the recreative reproduction process, the first process to come into existence is that the organism just splits into two. Okay? So taking that premise and putting it backwards, did the original nothing split into two, and then obviously split into 4, 8, 16, 32, and then it becomes just a binary splitting, and so the clump sticks together. Yes, Sam.
A question. You have those two regeneration models. Where does the model for, let's say, trees or seeds come from? Where one organism generates, let's say, millions of seeds that then get spread all over.
Those came much, much later.
Splitting of a multiple kind?
Yeah, that's the multiple kind, yeah.
So that is a splitting still.
Yeah, and that's bisexual reproduction. All those bisexual reproductions evolve much quicker than asexual reproduction. And obviously, when we look at the animal kingdoms as well, the cold-blooded animal kingdom are much longer lived, and they're very slow to reproduce, and their energy levels are extremely low. So it's kind of mimicking the life systems on Earth are mimicking the kind of systems that occurred out there a long time ago, as it warmed up and become warmer and warmer. I don't know what the average temperature out there in the universe is, but it's still very, very low. It's heating up though slowly.
Wait, what? Really? I thought the universe was cooling down.
The universe is expanding, and we talk about something called the dark matter. Something is causing the acceleration to be greater than the expected acceleration from the Big Bang. There's something out there that is expanding other than the rate of expansion from the Bang. And the only other thing that could expand are little balls of nothing, without which we wouldn't exist at all. Because that space there allows us the movement that we need to move.
Oh, so you mean like balls of space in a way?
Well, if you look at the atmosphere, Glenn, now the atmosphere is full of gases, 20% oxygen, 70% nitrogen, and hydrogen, and traces of other gases, dust particles, etc. For anything to move through the atmosphere, those atoms and molecules have to move out of the way. If there was something else in the way, they wouldn't be able to move out of the way. And the only thing that's in the way is nothing. Hello, Thais. Nice to see you. So that kind of leads me to believe that in between the molecules of the air, in between the molecules of, say, even water and other fluids, and as we know, in between an atom itself, in between the outer layer of electrons and the inner layer of electrons and the protons and neutrons, there is space. And in between those, in those layers of protons, neutrons, electrons, there is an electromagnetic field even. So the electromagnetic field, just the magnetic field itself had to come into existence sometime. I know we call it the electromagnetic field. Looking out there, it transpires that magnetic fields came into existence before electrons. Electrons are solid little balls of energy, and there are lots of energy in there. So we just give Thais a check-in or bring him up to speed?
Yeah, it takes some time to adjust. So it took some time to come in the Zoom. So I couldn't get in, and now I get in. So I was cooking.
Zoom's been playing up. I couldn't get into the Friday meeting yesterday. I don't know why. Just kept rejecting. I think it's all, Zoom is very, very busy. Sam's brought his dog in off the bridge. That was quick. We're just talking about the beginning of the universe and what sort of possible beginnings there could have been before the so-called Big Bang. I'm not rejecting the Big Bang. There is solid proof that it occurred, but what was there before the Big Bang, when the temperature was 0, and that's minus 273 point something degrees Kelvin, which would make it extremely cold, and it is. And no pressure at all, no atmosphere, nothing, and which is pretty much the same kind of state we're in today. But there appears to be something we call dark matter, and there appears to be some energy which is permeating through most of the universe, and most of that energy today is electromagnetic radiation and magnetic fields and gas fields, hydrogen and others, I presume, possibly helium. There's lots of hydrogen, because exploding stars give off tremendous amounts of hydrogen, amongst other things. So I was just coming to the stage of where, after several little explosions producing something or other, there probably may be sufficient pressure for a gigantic explosion, which has left a lot of creative matter about. And there are lots of explosions going on today. Gigantic, from little stars like ours to gigantic stars. The clumps of matter mixed in with nothing exploding. Did you put your hand up, Sam?
I'm curious how this connects to how you live life on a daily basis, if I may ask. How does the Big Bang, or what happened during the Big Bang, connect with how you conduct each day? Or is that off topic?
Me personally?
Yes, you personally first, and then, possibly with implications for others.
Me personally, I spend most of my time in mantra meditation, which was for a number of years, which was done with the out loud meditation of a mantra. Then I moved on to several different mantras. Then I came back to the original mantra. And that made a tremendous difference to the way I think and behave. And eventually I moved on to the silent mantra. And the silent mantra leads to that part of the mind-brain combination where thought arises. So the idea is to replace the thought arising process with just something to put in there, to get in there, to cease all thinking. And this particular session of lockdown has been very good to me, because I think I'm almost there. This week especially, it's Saturday today, towards the middle of the week, I was almost non-thinking, gone. I was non-reactive. I was doing things with the children and going out and about doing it. It was kind of like, it wasn't me doing things, but just the body doing things, and I'm guiding it along, kind of thing. And today, getting up today, it's been tremendous. I've done very little thinking, apart from today and yesterday, and starting about Wednesday. What should I talk about on Saturday? And I gave that some bits of time and decided that this is the one thing that's really, really ongoing in my mind.
Mine too.
I see no reason why I shouldn't talk about it. So in my everyday life, yeah, I still do some sort of research. I look for anybody else who's at that level of thinking. Apart from the great, very great Eastern philosophers and gurus, nobody else mentions this sort of thing. Most of the time, it's a very short, in the beginning, there was nothing except the nothing and God, or the word and God. And that makes 2 or 3 items. And then when it pleased God, he created creation, and it's always a he. In one of the other scriptures I read, or was given to understand, that God had a thought, and that thought led to creation. So it's that kind of repetitive lines that I pick up, and it just is. There's no great explanation.
I just have one question. Before we move into this is so interesting. But you said also that there's space inside that we're not aware of, in a sense, if I understood you right. That you're saying it's like this bubbles of nothingness, that's space
Yeah.
inside us. So
Yeah.
so does that mean that if we have this space inside us,
Yeah.
and it's perhaps infinitely deep, then obviously that's the relevance to the daily life. I mean, it has to be relevant, right?
It is extremely relevant. If everything was solid, if you take a lump of iron, there's very little space in that lump of iron. And unless you heat it up, it doesn't move. And you have to heat it up to like 1500 degrees centigrade before it starts kind of moving. It liquefies at about 1540, something like that. And then it becomes a fluid. And at 1600, it's quite fluid. It flows like water. But you can't go near that fluid. I don't know if you've ever been into a foundry or a steel production, especially an open hearth steel production unit. It's extremely hot in there, and the sheds are open all the way around to let the heat out. So the tighter you pack something with less space inside, the more solid it becomes. And that takes a tremendous amount of energy.
So that's why I need all that space. Okay, so building on that, when you said that they divide in two, that's the evolutionary process then, that moves from the inside outwards. And that's been going on forever.
It's still going on, yeah.
And still going on. If that has gone on forever, if evolution has been going on forever, wouldn't there then be super intelligence that would have evolved sooner or later?
Well, bits and pieces of matter reaching us from other parts of the universe, not just our solar system, other solar systems. We get meteorites or asteroids, bits of matter that come out and they survive the entry into the atmosphere. They are showing some differences that are not local, they're not from our solar system. So that does lead us to believe that there are differences out there in the production of matter. And it is believed, although we have very little proof to say so, that the original atoms were different sizes. So the original atom we currently take to mean hydrogen, but it's not so. That the original atom was not the same as the hydrogen is currently. It was different. But we have no concrete proof. We haven't had anything from that region come to us yet. And it's supposition. So a lot of this is supposition, but then most of the things that we talk about are assumptions and suppositions.
At the same time, we're talking about something very real.
Well, you know, we talk about things like intelligence. I'm jumping forward a little bit. At the very least amount of intelligence is just something being able to switch something. So if you have something and nothing, that then is kind of like a memory thing. And if you have memory, that's the start of intelligence. And the more memory you have, the more systems you're able to build. And that can lead on to almost what we are today. We're lots of systems that have come together to produce a being that is capable of going back into space to look for the answers as to where we came from.
So just to round out my understanding of the context, you've done a lot of reading.
Yeah.
But just trying to confirm, you've read the Tao Te Ching as well.
Say again?
Have you read the Tao Te Ching and studied Taoism?
No, I haven't studied Taoism. I have very little knowledge of Taoism.
Because one of the first premises it talks about is before there was something, there was nothing, and which is essentially your opening statement.
Yeah.
And in Tai Chi, we are taught, Wu Ji, which is nothingness, was there before Tai Chi, right? Which is then the flow of energy. So it sounds like what you are saying as your theory, as you put it, is somewhat in parallel with the teachings of Taoism and the Tao Te Ching. Another question I have is, if you believe in what is commonly referred to as science, science currently believes, and it's only a belief, it's not a proof, that we cannot know anything before any Big Bang, that the information does not survive through a Big Bang. So I'm wondering whether or not this presupposition or any of these speculation could ever be verified. And if it cannot be verified, then I'm curious how it informs us.
I personally disagree with that statement. I have reached a state in my meditation where I can connect with the light outside of me. So inside me, yes, I can generate the divine light, which is already there. But more than several times, I have joined up with the light outside. On the very first time, I have mentioned this before, that when I became aware of this light, it raised a lot of questions. I didn't have revelations, but it made me ask fundamental questions of what am I, who am I, what am I doing here? And I set off looking for the answers. Initially, I went off to the library and I got books on the big 6 religions and started reading them, Hinduism, Islam, etc. And going through them, the similarities of how they say everything started, to how creation came about, was alarmingly similar. And it didn't really matter what I went into or what I looked at, Buddhism, amongst others. The stories were very, very similar. So to say that we can't go beyond would be to say that we can destroy a particle that carries memory. That would, hence, in other words, the premise is that the Big Bang, by its very essence, destroyed all other memory, replacing itself with its own stamp. That would be to say that anything created before the Big Bang is destroyed. But can you destroy particles which still exist prior to that, which was so far away, wouldn't be affected by the heat of the Big Bang?
So does that mean that memories travel between universes?
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Little bits of matter travel and they're carrying memory and they come and tell us our stories. And then there is this matter of the soul energy, that we all have a soul. And inside the soul is something we call the spirit. And that too is a memory system. So do these predate the Big Bang? And some of the religions also mention a place beyond where there is absolutely nothing, that if a being, any being on this planet, can stop their thought processes, they can access that place where there is absolutely nothing. So when they die, They will never be born again. And that is the ultimate nirvana. And that's what I've come across.
And still, though, that life will be stored somehow, forever.
I
Maybe
don't see why it
repeating
can't be
forever.
so.
And maybe repeating forever.
In my premise, Glenn, this is a serious talk. Can you give me 10 minutes and I'll come and talk with you, okay?
So just wonder, may I give you a few personal reactions
Yeah,
to some
sure.
of this? The notion that information can exist apart from physical construct like energy or matter is an interesting one. If you believe information representation as it is understood by me today, it's not possible for information to be in existence or to be transmitted if it's not encoded in some energy or some matter. So that's that I'm struggling with, okay? Second is this presupposition, again, that there is a soul.
Yep.
I don't think that, I just don't know it, okay? I can understand what people say about it, but I don't see how that informs, again, the conduct of my life.
Okay.
What I'm actually trying to figure out is that to be good, to be calm, to be meditative, to be compassionate, to be simple, to be patient, to me requires none of this belief in pre-Big Bang, existence of souls, transference of memory. It doesn't presuppose any of that. So if I do believe it, that's okay. If you believe it, that's okay. But to me, the conduct of my life in this brief time here is guided by principles which I think are not solely dependent on those beliefs. And that's why I'm trying to figure out how it influences the conduct of daily life. And I guess behind this is a little bit of Occam's razor. In other words, if I have two theories, and both theories explain what's going on and guide, then I choose to believe the simpler one. Now, that's not an absolute. No one has to do that, but it just seems like it's less overhead, less complicated, less to keep track of, to actually get as simple as possible. And there is where I actually do put a lot of credence in one of the three main precepts of Taoism, which is simplicity. So that's my personal reaction is, yes, that's all good. It can be beautiful. It can be guiding. It can, guide us towards good behavior, all this sort of thing. But on the other hand, I view it as not the only way. So that's what I figure out. Over.
The memory system that's required to build the body, the biological body that is the evolutionary process which started on Earth. So the memory system before the biological system came along was to build the planet Earth and lots of planets that could generate life. The seed that starts the life is the soul energy that comes from beyond. So between the biological and the external energy coming in starts the whole process off. That memory, and there are two folds of memory here, which is the soul energy memory, and then you've got the biological memory to make the body. The biological memory we carry within each and every cell that is generated, no matter what the organism or how old it is. And the combination of the two is what we are. So that's pretty straightforward. And it supposes in that there is something that cannot be destroyed, which is the direct opposite of that everything else is destructible. So when the planet goes, all the memory that's the biological memory, that will be destroyed. But the other memory will continue. Yeah.
You mean the soul memory?
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a question, Sam, before you go, because this is to you? And so if I hear you right, you're saying it's unknowable. So what's the relevance for my practical life? And because I actually don't know.
Which part is unknowable?
Well, that was the point Sam made. And then you mentioned here the soul energy. So the thing I'm is, what if, yes, if this really is the case, that's my question, Sam. If it really is the case, that this is how it is, it's an eternal energy that's from the inside into the deep, that's it, that's simply how it is. And if that's the case, then surely that is relevant for everything, right? If it actually is the case, for real.
Apart from the part of what you said that Sam says it's unknowable, the rest I agree with. It is knowable.
I think.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you think about that.
I don't know about all of you, but I really am feeling a soul memory. I want to hear more about that.
Well, everybody has a soul memory, Lauren. With a little bit of practice, everybody can reach the soul memory and actually see the soul, be joined with it. Sam?
I was curious, and there's a whole series of questions here. Number one, starting with my dog here, does my dog have a soul? Does my cat have a soul? Going all the way down to, do worms have souls?
Yeah.
Do mice and spiders and bees, and do amoeba have souls? Do paramecia have souls? Do bacteria and viruses have souls? Down to, does rock have a soul? Does dirt and water have soul? And then, you know, keep going. So I'm trying to figure out, or here's the other way to ask it. If you understand the way DNA is structured, and if you understand that the ways that those encode information and the various combinations of adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, all those various ways they can be put together, there are a large number, but they're not all represented in human beings, right? So there's a tremendous multitude of possible beings that could have been born, right? So you say there's all this soul memory out there, and yet at some point, someone is born. So what part of this universe of soul memory gets assigned to this one being? Or is it just all accessible and we can be anybody we want to be with whatever memory we have to be, despite the specific arrangement of our DNA and the specific arrival to be within a particular species or phylum or, you know, family? There's a whole bunch of different questions here driven by curiosity.
Little one is chuntering here.
Your question probably made more sense.
I think this is totally awesome. Yeah, keep going. Let the magic flow. Because this is truth. We're exploring truth here.
Jasminder, can I ask a question? Oh, is he gone?
Here? Wait a minute. Let me look at my list of people here. It looks like Jaswinder. Oh, no, he's still there. Oh, he just went off camera because he had a family matter. Probably Garup was asking him a question. Anyway, does my question make sense to the rest of you, or is it just bouncing around in my head? And I'm sorry to be
Makes perfect sense.
questioning here, but I just have questions on this topic. So please do shut me up and ask your own questions.
I understand your question.
So it's about freedom to become who we want to be, in a sense, that you're also asking about. Can
I'm
we
also
become
asking about this
anyone?
relationship between all this soul memory versus each of us specific individuals and entities.
How can we use it in daily
Right.
life?
And so why do I get to be a poor Ethiopian child starving until I'm 3 years old and dying? Or how do I get to be lucky enough to be here on Camino Island versus how do I get to be an elephant in Africa versus, you know, so what is this?
Well, we've all evolved from the very tiniest creatures. The initial creatures would have been extremely small with extremely small amounts of memory. No more than just a fold of kind of like a bag thing, smaller than a virus. A virus is retrospective. It's something that's gone back to being simpler than a bacteria. But that's only my summation. So each and every soul has started off somewhere or other and is on its own journey through all the processes that the universe offers. Okay? A lot of life systems have become extinct and we are no longer able to enjoy them. And those that exist are progressing forwards. If we take that man is the ultimate product of that system, then they're all on their way toward this particular kind of being. Moreover, the number of people that exist today, 7.5 to 8 billion approximately, does not that approximate the total amount of people that beings that are on their way forward. That might be a little bit on the hard side to understand. The number of animals that we have destroyed in the last 100 years or so, making them extinct, are they coming back as human beings? Are their soul energies transmuting from bisons, buffaloes, elephants, sea-going creatures into human beings? They're all on the journey forward. If those evolutionary journeys hadn't been taken, we wouldn't have evolved either. And we're evolving constantly as well. Hello, Josh.
Yeah, Joshua Bridge is with us. Good to see you.
Hello, good morning.
You will love this conversation, Josh. We're really exploring the truth of everything existing.
Beautiful, Glenn. Thank you. Thank you for the nice warm welcome. Just waking up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So Jaswinder, I think I heard another presupposition that I'm also struggling with, which is that humans are the ultimate form of evolution. It's arguable that we have not deserved that. And if you want to look objectively, there are beings with more chromosomes than we've got. And so I'm not clear that biologically that's even true. Now, from a matter of being able to harness energy and to affect the change, yeah, that's one metric in which we probably can be measured as some form of higher being, although that's not one that I hold in particular virtue. So I'm curious about that presupposition as well. Over.
don't see any other animals looking for the answers that we're looking for. I don't see any.
Maybe they've
other,
already found them.
I don't know. It is
I think dogs are
arguable
quite
that
wonderful, quite loving beings, you know, so I don't see that they need to search for anything.
I'm not arguing with that. It may well be so that birds travel across the globe and they can navigate on the electromagnetic lines that the Earth produces. I don't doubt that. But at the same time, is there a supposition that we can't feel the electromagnetic field of the Earth? In between the
organs in our
hours of
brains.
in between the, yeah, of course, it's all in the brain.
No, we don't have the same ones that birds do, is what I'm saying.
This is a very important statement. Let me just make this one statement. In between the hours of about midnight onwards, say about 2 a.m. to false dawn, there is, whichever part of the world you're on, that section of the time, early in the morning, there is no electromagnetic radiation coming and hitting the Earth, that part of the Earth, from the sun. So there's electromagnetic silence, there is Earth silence, the wind drops to almost zero, and sometimes it is zero. And if you get up early enough and have an early morning bath and sit and listen and just feel the lack of electromagnetic radiation, it's mind-bogglingly good. Now, one time I was driving from one city to another, from this city to another city, and there was a full sort of eclipse of the sun. And for a very short time, I was sitting in the car, parked the car, and that very short time of lack of electromagnetic radiation, the lack of it was the same as the early morning one. And that happens twice a day. That early morning period is quite long. It's about a couple of hours long. And every evening after the sun goes down and before the Earth starts releasing electromagnetic radiation, there's a small space of about 20 minutes or so. And you can sit and feel that, and that becomes the evening prayer time. So these phenomena, they exist. We are capable of feeling them, and we may well be able to use them for our navigational purposes. You can tell north from south, east from west. Just because somebody else says we don't feel them, we can't feel them, it doesn't mean, does that apply to everybody? I'm afraid it doesn't. It just means that some people are more aware of these phenomena than others. And there are more people who are less aware than there are people who are more aware. That's always been the case. And you really have to work hard at it. I'll rephrase that. Most people, me included, have to work hard at it to come to realize these things and have faith. You know, it's like learning to do anything, riding a motorbike. You've seen others do it, and you have to have faith that one day I will do that as well. Yes, Sam.
So you've done a lot of reading and research on this. I'm wondering, when you actually talk about this energy, is there a frequency spectrum that it corresponds to? My question is because many of us live in large cities where there are ovens, there's lights, there's internet signals, there's radio signals, there's microwave signals, there's communication signals, and there's all kinds of other telemetry. So even at night, none of those systems actually shut down. So I'm wondering what frequency range you're actually talking about, and is that really an observable phenomenon?
The observable part of it is the diamond light, which is the divine light. The rest of it, you can feel. The infrared spectrum, you can feel that. I can feel that. If you go to the other side of the spectrum, the violet and the indigo, I don't know. But certainly the silence is there. the electromagnetic silence, the sound silence. So the lack of the energy is feelable, and the energy that's available is seeable. The energy you're producing is seeable. And the divine light, even at that time of the day, yeah, I can join with that. Yeah, I have joined with it. And if you want to know what happens, it's kind of like the lightning joining up, is that there is a lead kind of comes out of me and it goes up. And then something from the other end comes to join with that lead, and it becomes kind of like a solid pillar of light. Yeah, I'm complete on that.
I hate to keep asking questions and monopolizing this, but in the silence, I might.
I'm glad you're asking. At least
Go for it. You're
To
asking
me, it
great
sounds
questions.
like what you're describing, if I use different words, is exactly the reason why I'm living where I'm living. You know, it's beautiful here, it's green, there's clean water, there's clean air, there's less pollution, there's less light pollution, there's less noise pollution, there's less electromagnetic pollution, there's less people pollution, you know, there's less trash, there's more animals. So in many ways, the energy that I get from living where I'm living right now is a benefit to me, and it doesn't have all those other distracting, chaotic, you know, pollutant kinds of energy. Now, I'm not sure that maps to what exactly you're talking about. I don't use the word divine, you know, when I'm talking about where I live, although I could, you know, if I was a religious person. So I view the parallel dynamics as topologically similar, not topically similar, topologically similar, if you get the mapping. So anyway, that's how I'm feeling, you know. So if people really say, hey, I love the early morning because it's so quiet and I can actually be, quote unquote, you know, with the universe. It's a sense, you know, I interpret that to be mostly what you're talking about. Or I love the dusk because, you know, it's the same feeling. Or I love being in the middle of the night and just, you know, sitting and just being myself and being quiet. You know, to me, all those things are very similar.
Yeah, there's no denying that, none whatsoever. And the sages of old who did the practices, during the last 15 years or so, I've had the privilege of other people making inquiries, and some people have, with practice, gone on to those higher stages of seeing the light and of passing through these various barriers, and they're much better for it. And others who are extremely religious people, well, they're a little bit jealous that they do all the practices and they don't get to see what they've been promised to see. So I don't know what the criteria is, whether you're in the city or whether you're not in the city, but I do know that with practice, it will happen. Doesn't really matter where you are. I live on a main road here, and I've been in this house since 1993 or thereabouts. It's the parental home, so I was here for a long time. I left home around about 83, and 93 I came back. 73 I left home. 93 I came back, 20-year gap. And this is a main A road, and over there is a highway that feeds straight into the city. But around about midnight, the traffic calms down, and virtually 1 or 2 cars an hour, and before about 4 a.m. there's no traffic. Although the street lights are on, it's very quiet. And there is a public house across the road there, about 150 meters away. Most people go home about 11, 12 p.m. and it's quiet. But the kind of quiet I'm talking about is completely different. It has to be experienced in the way that is described in texts going back thousands of years. I'm talking about the Torah texts and the texts of the old, the original Bible. And they are the same sort of texts in the Far East as you've just explained yourself. And there's virtually no difference. That to me is mind-bogglingly good, that places on this earth, thousands of miles apart, they have convergent evolution of these phenomena, and they're doing the same things at the same times, and they're saying virtually the same things in different languages. So it can't be wrong. Hello, Lauren. Nice to
That's
see
quite
you
a big
again.
jump.
Bye,
It's an
Jaswinder.
extremely
Thank
big jump.
you.
Hey, Lauren, good of you.
So Jaswinder, how would you formulate that one message? Is there a way to sort of formulate the common message?
Who would believe
think
you?
Maybe everyone, if it was the common message. I
Well,
don't know.
I was fortunate that I was afforded a lot of these studies with somebody else's money, because I joined the local interfaith group, and they were running courses with the local university. Prior to that, I had to pay for my university researches by paying the university fees, which was the Open University. So it takes a lot of time to read the scriptures. They're not in any kind of order that would be expected. They're in some sort of order. And to get that information from each and every religion and then correlate it is an immensely time-consuming exercise. I rejoined the university in about 94, 95, and started the researches there and went to lectures to see who was saying what about what. Then I left that off and did a lot of reading on my own at the same time and later on. And as and when I came along across these phenomena, I noted them. And I was reading one of my notebooks, I've got it here, this week, and they are there. The methodology all across the religions is extremely similar. The practices of doing things are extremely similar. How to produce silence inside in a way when you're sitting in a crowded room and there's a lot of noise about you is extremely similar. And unless one practices those on their own, you're not going to get the benefit. You know, there's a saying in almost all religions, if you're hungry and you give me your food, you're still going to be hungry and I'll be fed. If we share it and we have half each, then both of us can continue to go on, which is much better. So for you to share this, somebody has to be hungry, somebody has to be looking for this kind of thing. How that hunger comes about is that they start asking questions like we are doing here. This doesn't fit for me. What am I doing here? Why am I here? Those are the sort of three fundamental questions. What am I? Is there a purpose to life? Why are there different kinds of life forms? Is that saying true that if I am naughty in this lifetime, I will be reincarnated, for argument's sake, as a snake, which is it's a despised form of life. It's a sneaky form of life. Is that true? Or is the guru using that to scare me to go in the right direction? So all those questions and answers are in the scriptures, and you have to read them and you have to practice the practices. Who wants to get up at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning and be bathed and clothed and sitting and doing nothing on a winter's day? It's even earlier in the summer, because sunrise starts at about 4 a.m. You might only have an hour between 3 and 4 a.m. to be sitting there waiting to feel whatever it feels like, or to listen to the nothing. Not a lot of people do that. I didn't know a lot of these techniques till I started going out to the first meditation that I did in a group was the Buddhist meditation of no thinking. 11 days of sheer quietness, no talking, no anything. You get up early in the morning, have a bath or a shower, get dressed, go and sit in a hall with a lot of people and just sit on a chair or on the floor and keep awake. That's not easy. It is a lot of work. The old sages went and sat in the mountains, or they went to the jungles away from people, because they become distinctly different to the people that they're living with. Their conversations, my conversation is distinctly different. Everybody I talk to them at their level, I humor them, because they don't understand. I can't make them understand. The question is good, Glenn, but the answers are that, okay, we can put that into a succinct form, but to unpack that means that you have to do those practices. It's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge there. It took 250 years approximately of the Industrial Revolution to produce the means to be able to put that bridge up. That's a heck of a lot of evolution in the use of the iron and steel as a building material, isn't it?
So are you kind of saying then that all these traditions have amassed different tools for this transformation? It's possible for
Yep.
us.
Yep.
And since we have also the divine light always there,
Yep.
soul energy always there, which comes from something eternal, this is like a gate, a kind of opening or a kind of entry that we could come in contact with, and that would bring about a totally different way of being and therefore a totally different life. It's kind of what you're pointing to. So you're really saying then that all these teachings have lots of different types of wisdom, but they also have some common things that all of them say. Like, for example, it's existed forever. There's intelligence everywhere, and it's glorious, and we are essentially glorious, and we have glorious possibilities, and it is reached through this direct contact with now, right? Through the experience of presence, and that's where science meets this, because of the empiricism of science. It's the facts, and that's where it ties together with this idea of vibrations, which is central to the Tao. So this is where it comes together. Yeah, this makes sense.
Thank you.
I really like this. So does this then mean that in a sense we could reinvent ourselves at any moment if we come in contact with this energy and just let it act fully?
I would liken it to the Christian saying of being born again. And it happens several times. Each stage, there are about minimum six stages that one has to go through. And each stage takes you onto a higher and higher level till eventually you get to the God level. And you are in contact constantly with God. And that level of being is just sheer joy. Everything is just perfect. There is no wrong, only righteousness. And each and every life form, even if you think that they are suffering, it is a phase they're going through, they're learning. And they're suffering. If we want to alleviate their suffering, all we have to do is to share with them. So if we were to dampen down on greed, everybody would be fed every day. But that you have to balance against our evolutionary process of where we all need a sort of a minimum amount of territory to be, to exist. You know, your five basic needs: food, sustenance, food and water, clothing, somewhere, some shelter. Those are the three minimum ones: something to do, something to be. If you don't have those, then you can't really exist in a good state of being. But we become greedy and we want more and more, and we appropriate other people's well-being to increase our own without sharing. And that is one of our biggest tests currently, is are we going to share? Are we going to change our direction? Or are we going to say, well, one particular subspecies or one particular culture wants to become dominant and destroy all the others? Either way is acceptable, but is it being honest? Is it being fair?
Yeah, it would be great to hear Colin, Kayla, and Thais. Hear your thoughts if you have any. Loving this. Go for it, Colin. Yeah. You have to turn on the sound, Colin. No.
Can you hear me now? Okay, yeah, it's these headphones. Yeah, I have a hard time. I'm not so aligned with this conversation as Glenn seems to be. Glenn seems very, and I've talked to Glenn before, and I'm not surprised because, you know, and whether Jazz and Glenn could decide whether there was always something or if we start from nothing, like all the ancient stories say. I know Glenn's a proponent of there must probably have always been something, because where would nothing come from? And that was, I had an interesting discussion with Glenn about that. So these are nice things to contemplate, and how it relates to your changing the way you go about life. I think it's once you start to hit the crossroads of these ancient stories are meant to teach you something. So, and so without going too far down that road, it's, you have to judge, I think a good unbiased way to look, or maybe completely biased way to look at what you hold valuable as knowledge would be what you would pass on to your kids. So, and in some respects, freedom of speech has been not always as free as we would like, what one could say. So I feel like I'm living in a time where I'm enjoying freedom of speech. So I don't really have the bias of thinking too much of what I say I'll be judged by. I could pick a religion today, I could pick another religion in a year or so, and I would hope nobody would judge me any differently for that. But that said, I don't think religion is really the ultimate arbitrator of those stories anymore. And I guess one question I have is, are human beings more than animals, or are they simply another kind of animal, meaning that soul? That has not been determined, and that's a particular story that seems to change the way people perceive what they would like to have as a worldview and what matters, especially if they think somebody's watching them all the time and judging them and their afterlife. So, like, some of these ancient stories are considered religions, and some of them aren't. I think a modern one would be considered humanism. It's not a religion. It's kind of like a philosophy built on lesser harm or a greater good of some kind. But yeah, are we more like the people who believe that humans are more than just animals, basically animals plus something, where a dog might not have that same plus, like they say, do dogs and cats go to heaven? That kind of a silly question. So, I think that puts people into two camps: people who think that there's more to the human than, something endowed upon them divinely, and people who don't. Not saying that humans don't have extremely wide range of possibilities of what they can do with their minds. It comes to mind the boy with the incredible brain, savants, just amazing things that you can't explain really. And you'd almost make you think there was some kind of a higher power, but no, it's just the way that those brains are wired. And perhaps religions were made for everybody. And we have to remember that, I don't know if you believe in the IQ system, but the Army uses it to see who they can allow into the Army. So it may not correlate 100% with what somebody is, but it definitely correlates to, how reliably they can do something. And so, or how much they understand instructions and whatnot. And I think their cutoff is 83. And they say about 10% of the population has an IQ of 83 or less. So, religions could really be, and it's kind of an awful thing to say, but something to guide people who don't have the ability to think beyond. You give them these ancient stories, and that, that might have been a great way for everybody to be included. But I think science has taken the higher road and has a higher bar before it allows somebody to be confident in their conclusions. It's okay to have presuppositions, but can you actually justify your conclusions? And I think that's what I hear Sam, looking at, and I measure that too. And it's very interesting to listen to these things. And as unreal,
very interesting listening to you, Colin. But do you have an actual question?
yeah,
You're just summarizing, and in between you're posing questions, and then you
ask a good question.
Yeah.
That you think
Well, number one is, are humans more than just animals? Are they animals plus a soul or whatever, which would put people in two camps?
Well,
which I'm
not sure whether you heard what I had to say on that, but I'll repeat it now. Is that according to science, we have evolved from almost nothingness on this planet to humans. So every creature that is existing today arrived here. If we just take the mammals from about 60, 70 million years ago, it was a tiny little shrew-like animal, and it's evolved into all the other mammals on Earth. So that is the part of it, is that it's an evolutionary process. each of those animals has a soul. The question that arises in Christianity, which muddies I'll just, this particular talk I'm doing is nothing to do with religions, but this arises in Christianity and not a lot of the other ones, is that God, according to the Christian scriptures, God created all the beings, then created man, and after that created woman. So mankind came after animal kind. And that's being interpreted as that when mankind was created, then man's soul would have been created separately. Whereas most of the others are saying that the soul is in itself on an evolutionary journey as well. It goes forward with the life forms. Does that clarify your question?
You mean reincarnation? Reincarnation? Is that what you're talking about with the other stories? The soul?
Reincarnation of the soul, yes. Now,
yeah.
According to some searches that have been done in Christianity, Jesus alluded to the reincarnation of the soul, but he seems to have been lost in translation for some odd reason. And I, having done some of those researches myself, I'm of the same opinion. Around about 400 Anno Domini, when the then Saint Peter was courting the Roman Empire, somehow, somewhere around there, that the reincarnation part in the Christian tradition was lost. And there are other errors that have occurred in the Bible. I won't say errors, but misinterpretations in the Bible, which are not accurate. You have to really go back into the Greek and the Aramaic scriptures to find the original meanings. So we are reinterpreting in those particular aspects of that religion. And hopefully we'll have a better picture in the near future. I'm complete.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. So I guess
how
it
will
is
we
kind
recognize? I just have one question, Colin. How, or to all of you, how would we recognize a higher intelligence if there was one? Will we be able to recognize it?
Yeah.
So how would something like that be? How could we sort of, or how could we see the signs? What would the signs be?
The standard answer to that one is that when you see it, you will know it. You will feel it. That's the standard answer. I would go so far further than that, and I will say, when you come into the presence of the divine light, it will produce an instantaneous change in you.
That's simply a fact. I mean, it does.
And that change isn't the kind of change that you can change. It continues. It kind of builds a hunger inside you. A metaphysical, mental hunger, not a physical hunger as well, I suppose. It's coming up to 20 minutes to the top of the session.
I just have one question to end, and does what you're saying here, Jaswinder, does it point towards that we are part of this eternal evolutionary process? There's always a space opening up from inside of us, and it's life forms evolving. And
I will answer that with a question. We as a species, the only species, as far as I know, have become aware that this planet will not last forever. Furthermore, we are given something like 5 million years before the sun balloons up and swallows us up. Even at about 2.5 billion years from now, this planet may become uninhabitable. So there is a time limit. The exact time limit is being ascertained as we speak. We have the awareness that we have to vacate our homeland, home planet sometime or other. So yes, that does lead us into a very high sphere of thinking and knowledge, that we have to build some sort of machinery that can transport us, or at least our seed, to somewhere else. And that we have to have a planet which is very similar to this planet. So yeah, there are various ways of interpreting our being and our intelligence and whatever else you want to call it, the meaning of life. And even that's evolving. Everything is evolving. Whole creation.
Sam has something now.
I know. It's nearly quarter to, sorry, Sam, carry on.
So 2 questions, and then I'd invite people to have some last thoughts before we move into a retrospective. I've come across the word syntony, and I'm wondering whether or not that is similar, or whether you've come across it, to being with this divine light. To me, I think that they're quite similar concepts. So I'm just going to leave that on the table for people who might be interested in this word syntony and this notion of syntony. Second is this notion, just asked by you, that there's some sort of a calling for us to leave this planet. If our soul memory is everywhere and it's tapped into, then why can we not just, cease our existence here and begin another existence elsewhere, different planet, different galaxy perhaps, and our soul memory will be retained? Why does it require our physical transportation to that other place? I don't see that as necessary if I accept your premise on this soul memory. So that's my last set of questions. Then I invite other people to sort of have some closing thoughts before we move into
question.
Excellent questions. Anybody want to take either of those or both of those? Okay. The last question first then. So imagine, if you will, that there is a point out there somewhere producing souls, and these souls don't have much memory except that they've been produced and off they go. The ones that land on this planet will go through the evolutionary process to end up being a human being. And at that stage, they will have the same kind of opportunity to gather the knowledge that you and I have. And the others will continue till they either cease to go forward or land on somewhere else where they may not be able to do anything. Not all seeds fall on fertile ground. That's written in the scriptures too. Some seeds fall on barren ground. As to your first question, I would ask you to elaborate some more on that particular aspect, and then maybe I can understand it better.
Okay, so I'll choose, because of brevity, not to follow up on your first answer, but let me explain a little bit more my first question. The notion of syntony, as I understand it, is to be in flow with the universe.
Yeah.
In accordance with what you understand, and rather not to be fighting it, not to be at odds with it, not to be in conflict with it.
Yeah.
So to me, that syntony idea is very similar, but without a religious context, to this being aligned with God or being aligned with a divine light. If I'm just to be brief about that.
But you are in alignment with something, and that's the main thing. What you
I'm alignment with flow. I'm flowing with what I understand the universe
what
to
is.
be.
You're flowing with what is, right?
In other words, I would choose to call it the Tao, or the universe, right?
The Tao, the universe, the it, the all, the this, the action,
right.
The whole thing.
I would quote Shakespeare, doth not the rose smell as sweet by any other name? It's the same thing. I'm complete, and it's 16 minutes. So if you want to do your...
So invite some last questions, last opinions.
Kayla and Vice, would love to hear from you if you have something you want to share, of course.
I noticed Joshua is no longer with us. I mean, on Zoom.
Lauren and Joshua went off about half an hour ago.
Kayla, you've been remarkably silent.
You know, to answer your question about can we be anything else, I started to think about DNA, and I do believe that we can change our DNA, and over given time we have. I do believe that soul has memory, a lot of memory. I mean, I always question, is that for us to really find an answer to? It's a pretty deep question, very, very deep. I don't know. I'm doing a puzzle right now, and it's a 1,000-piece puzzle. And it's been a long time since I've done puzzles like this, but I noticed that some pieces are obvious that they fit together, and some pieces can be questionable. You know, and sometimes you've got them and you're just like, there's one piece here and I know it's got to fit somewhere, and then you have to rearrange everything.
Yep.
I do believe that when you think of terms of time, it really doesn't exist.
True.
So the question of soul itself, I think that's more tangible than time. So I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. I've been enjoying listening. Again, I'm more of a listener than anything. So if I'm quiet, I'm just letting my
listeners, that's a very important contribution. It is. You have some people just listening and sitting. That's a great help.
Yeah, we have to listen and dance. We have to listen with everything. The music, the rhythm, we have to flow.
There's not enough listening in the world.
Yeah, we have to take that energy and bring it back out.
I'd love to see what dance you produce from these ideas. Anybody else with closing thoughts, comments, before I move into our survey round?
Yeah, this is a pretty good one. It dances very close to religion for me because of all the presuppositions that sneak in that I don't think religious people notice, or people who tend to be spiritual. Because I feel like I could agree with most things until it gets a supernatural aspect to it.
And what is supernatural? What does that mean?
Well, for instance, when you're talking about being in line in the flow and the chi and the Tao and all that stuff, to me, that's your feelings. That's this very highly developed system of evolution to help you align. And if you're out of alignment, you feel pain and fear for whatever reason. So we have a nervous system that gives us pain if we're in physical. We have emotions, and we also have positive emotions that say we're going the right way. And I think evolution plays a trick on us when it comes to procreating and thinking the importance of this. And as you get older, you can see elements of that as you mellow out from the hormones of teenagehood and having children, and you go through a seasons of change. So it's retrospective, but it's so easy to see how the story would want to be a purpose for things other than evolution, right? Other than procreating. That seems to be the one that I land on. That's kind of the ultimate purpose. I think Jazz hit on that about spreading, humans far and wide over the universe. So when it comes to this,
no.
Well, to another planet, maybe.
Yeah, let's clarify.
That is not human.
Well,
when the seeds stop.
Not that these aren't worth following up, but I was wondering if we could actually just keep this to closing statements rather than debate, so we can actually move into the survey.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting to. Like, there's some things that definitely could use some clarification, because of, again, like, I hear things a different way than they're said. So, you know, you have to follow up and find the nuances of. And Sam did really good at asking some preliminary questions. So, you know, I thought that was pretty good. But yeah, this seems to be a predecessor to that conversation we could have that kind of merges the idea of zero nothingness with religion and science and the practicalities where they meet. And, you know, is it really just all a ball of feelings that people are injecting purpose into and then coming up with religion that serves everyone? Or, you know, are we getting to an age now where we just cannot deny the fact that we've
religion and science and anything else, including evolution, they're all means of trying to explain how we got here. It's not definitive. Science itself is not definitive.
Can I request that we keep it to closing statements rather than continue?
That's my closing statement. I'm complete.
I have a few
I don't think I was quite.
add on.
I don't think I was quite done yet. Thank you, Jazz, for interrupting. So yeah, I was saying that would be great to follow up with that, as Jazz is gung ho to do that, and other people, because I do think that we are in an age of enlightenment again, where, you know, there's time where we can kind of shake off some of the supernatural baggage and go to the real elements of what, you know, truth. I guess the search for truth is the big word we use here.
I think we're trying to do that today, right? I really think we're trying to do that.
We're pointing towards it, but I don't, you know, I think we're scratching at our feelings and calling them truth. And it's true, we feel things, but it's the conclusions we come up with. I think Sam said that's a far stretch. That's far reaching. I feel the same kind of way.
Can we keep this to closing statements rather than continue
done.
Debate?
I'm done. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, I just have a few things to add on. So I'm just going to say what I'm hearing from this winter, and maybe a few of the things that you all brought. I think you're all on a roll today. Really great stuff from everyone. And so what I'm hearing is something has always existed. There's an evolutionary process. It's happening on all levels. There's soul on all levels. There's space on all levels. There's events on all levels. It's always been like that, always going to be like that. There are human beings. We're also on a journey. We're also consisting of smaller units who are also consisting of smaller units. That's the geometrical structure. It's always smaller worlds within larger worlds, and it's eternal. And there's an evolutionary process going on. And we are some very advanced beings who are capable of experiencing this journey and thus capable of, to various degrees, take responsibility for who we become and how this journey plays out. And that's the connection to daily life. So the first question, which was, where do we come from? How could it all begin? That's the question of our origin. And if it is in fact eternal, then some kind of really advanced structures would have emerged long ago, even if it's not even conscious in the sense that we would consider conscious, but it's simply intelligent structures, and that includes information, which you mentioned, Sam, and you were speaking about memory and whether information can travel between universes, and just when we're making a case that it could, and at least on a certain level, some kind of information could be transmitted. So basically, and then there is the divine light, then there is the soul energy, which is actually possible for people to come in contact with, and which many have come in contact with. And then there's certain ideas and certain insights that happen to those people in those situations, which have been written down in various places. And all of this gives rise also to these books and these traditions and religion and many other things. But it seems to be based on the human experience of being in contact with this other dimension and seeing some of these same things that every other person who we're in contact with has also seen, and they've expressed it then in their language as best as they could, which is not so easy, of course. And this is where it's confusing. But what you're sort of pointing against, it seems to me, is really that we have far larger possibilities now if we were to really see ourselves for what we are and recognize this divine light and this eternal soul, and in contact with that we could live and everything will be just better. That's basically what I'm hearing you say, and I love it. Thank you very much, Jaswinder.
Kayla, you have a final statement?
I think I said my final statement. I do want to say thank you. This has been wonderfully enlightening.
I invite Tees, if you have a final statement.
Thank you.
No? Okay. All right, then Jaswinder, do you have a closing statement before we go into the survey round? Ideally.
I think I made my closing statement.
You have
Okay,
anything
cool.
more, Sam, you want to share? Do you have anything more, Sam, you want to share? Just wonder.
I have hours and hours and hours. Just one little
love
story
to
then.
hear
How
a
about
little
this? When I was 14, I was my family moved to Seattle, and that's when I went to this school called Lakeside, and there was a class that I signed up for called philosophy, and I didn't know that normally that was reserved for seniors. I was a junior at the time, so I was in there with a bunch of seniors. They let me go in for some reason, and the curious thing I found about that class was the very last 30 days of the year. Each student in the class had one day, and each of us took that day to basically present a paper that we've been working on the entire year. The paper was called Credo, which is Latin for what I believe, or I believe. So it was an opportunity to say, this is what I believe, this is how I want to live my life, this is what I value, these are the things that I want to do with my life, all this wrapped up into a 1-hour session. I thought that was one of the most transformative classes I have ever taken. Because at 14, prior to taking that class, I literally cannot ever think of an original thought I had in my brain. Every thought in my brain was from someplace else. Even during the class and through that class, I think most of those thoughts were other people's thoughts. It wasn't until much, much later in life that I started to, sort of put thoughts together. And if you really think about it, I don't think one can really say, here are these millions of thoughts that are unique to me. There's actually very, very few. So I wanted to say that was life-changing to me. And so just to make 2 more final statements, and then I'll let you say, and then we'll move into the survey round. One is, philosophy to me can be either, and it encompasses a lot of things, but at least 2 things are true for me about philosophy. One is an exploration of truth. Another is basically searching for how to live one's life. Ideally, they're synonymous and resonant, but they don't necessarily have.
I want both.
And sometimes, one exists in one domain without the other. One could say that science may be one of those searches for truth that for most people may not apply to personal life. Religion may be something that applies to personal life that has almost relatively nothing to do with truth. And that's a very confrontational statement, I understand, okay? But anyway, I'm just trying to make the point. So anyway, philosophy to me is that it's a very fundamental part of being human, which is curiosity in the universe, curiosity in life. So that's why I think it's valuable. And ever since I was 14, these questions are always, believe it or not, kind of underlying, why I do certain things and why I don't do other things, and how I connect all of that together, or where I'm out of alignment. Those are all things I consider at various times of the day. Okay, so anyway, Jaswinder, please respond, and then I'll move into the survey.
I went through a phase of trying to live life as an equal to everybody. Very, very difficult. Secondly, the other point that you make is an original thought. I went through years and years of soul searching, literally sitting and searching. What can I say that is my own thought? If I speak a language, or more than a language, then everything that I take from those languages are cultural bound thoughts already given to me. Then none of those are mine. And I came up with two thoughts which I thought were mine. And I found them somewhere else. I haven't got a single thought of my own. I'm complete. If you wish to continue this some other time, I'm quite willing to have another session. And with that, I definitely am complete. Thank you for your time.
Well, after the survey round, I will definitely leave this session open if anyone wants to continue, okay? So at this point, I'm going to send around my standard 3 survey questions, okay? Here's the first one. I'll leave this up for about 20 seconds. We only have 3 votes so far. Please do vote.
Thijs doesn't have access to the survey.
What?
Thijs does not have access to the survey.
Oh, geez. Okay.
I have limited access in Zoom. I cannot only see the person that speaks. That's always in front.
If you swipe
and
one way or
others
the
I
other,
can't see.
you probably see it. But anyway, I'll end the poll now, and I'll share the poll results. Do you see the results?
100%.
3 yeses and 0 nos. With
That's a sign of success.
3 abstentions because I cannot vote. Okay, so no one thought that this was out of focus, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing the results and I'm going to launch question number 2. And I'll leave this up for 20 seconds.
If you speak the question, I can answer. Now I
Okay,
can't
the second
answer.
question is, did the moderator's moderation help keep us focused? This is question number 2. So far we have 3 votes. 3 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close this poll and I'm going to share the results. They're identical to the last one. Now, do you see the results, by the way? Okay, so I'm going to stop this and ask question number 3. Question number 3 coming up right now. And Tees, for your benefit, the question is, did we co-create with focus? Those questions came in quickly. Same 3, 0. Again, we're 5 seconds ahead of closing time. There is 1 no that just came in. Okay, so I'm going to end polling and I'm going to share these results. Okay. All right, so anyone with comments on this particular session, whether we attained focus, whether the moderation helped us achieve focus, and whether we co-created with focus?
I'll just say that thank you so much, Jaswinder. This was just amazing. You are amazing. And as you said, lightning came.
So I'll go. I may be a little bit pokey here. I did think that we had focus. I did think that you kept us focused. On the third one, on the co-creation bit, this is where I had a more difficult time, although I did not respond to the poll since I'm the host. And I felt that this was less of a discussion, more of a lecture, more of a classroom. And that's not inappropriate. I'm just saying that's the way I saw this particular session. Over. Anyone else?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And that I think that's just one style of a group session that we can have. So not that that's
Why
good or bad.
reduce it to such a category? Why should we reduce it to any category at all?
Well, I'm
Is
just
that
saying
necessary?
I'm not saying it's a category. I'm saying it's an experienced happening. So people get together and experience happenings in different ways. So if somebody has a bunch of information they want to relay, it will typically go into the form of a lecture. If somebody's just trying to perhaps solicit opinions, there might be a totally different open discussion, like a brainstorming. And then there's in between. So
did you feel
I do
this was
think
like a
focus.
lecture, or do you think thought
I
this was more
think it
like an
was.
exploration? Or
I think
I
it
felt it
was. And
I felt it like an exploration. Like,
well, see, I think Sam alluded to that last time, that during certain types of formats or topics or a speed, I think it was during unblocking actually, where he mentioned that his mind will sort of trail off into his own thoughts as he processes things. So, you have to take that into account as well. It's almost like, depending on how you experience, which I feel you experience this in a very high alignment type of a way. Me, I would have the opposite effect. But at the same time, I appreciate the genesis of the humanness of all of this, and why it is essential to understand, for coexistence, these different modes of worldviews. So it's not like, because I disagree with the conclusions, I think that the talk is irrelevant. I think quite the contrary. It's like, how do we, like, for instance, I was not interrupting at all during this talk because I wanted Jazz to be able to have the opportunity to get as clearly spoken what he wanted to say. And like things that would be worthwhile to pick apart, we could do it another time. And that's kind of, my feeling throughout a lot of the meetings we've had. Just that when there's a higher focus, we tend to let the person continue on. So the more prepared you are, I think the more focus you have. And I'm just repeating myself ad nauseum for the last months, but it is very important to get communication flow, and ways to disagree. I think, I do disagree with a lot that was said, but maybe I partially disagree. And maybe
was there anything specific you thinking of?
a lot of
Glenn, could we
presuppositions.
focus on the focus and the moderation and the co-creation piece rather than go back to that topic?
Yeah, that's the thing. We do tend to get back into it, and maybe we could, in the after show,
For
as
now.
Sam suggests, do that. Yeah. So I would say, the co-creation wasn't happening other than preparing for moving forward. Again, I think you can distill it down to the idea of understanding what somebody's trying to say, not just dismissing it. And that's the opposite of straw manning somebody in a discussion. You want to, what I call steel man.
Okay. Jaswinder has his hand up.
Now I have a question for Colin. He mentioned the word mythology. Now, what is mythology? The words like religion, systems, etc. come into it. I would like to know what exactly entails in a mythology. There are lots of mythologies. How do they come about?
So,
Yes, Sam.
Colin, before you answer that question, could I also just paraphrase a little bit? Because as Colin introduced the term mythology, there are many terms I felt that you also did introduce. Soul memory is one. Many other terms that came out without, let's say, a lot of background context / definition. So this is where we actually could get deep into the meat of the topic again. So if people are actually done talking about the focus, the moderation, the co-creation, then I'll release the floor and let us continue to go back to the topic itself. But I just wanted to make sure that we explored whether or not we focused, whether or not we co-created, whether or not we moderated appropriately. That's just one thing I want to close out before we go back into the debate.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I could say is not only was it a lecture, but I think it was based on what I would call human storytelling, whether true or not, whether useful or not. So we'll just leave it there.
Okay, so unless there are any other submissions, contributions, I will release my moderation responsibility and leave you guys to go wherever you want to go with this conversation at this point. Going once, going twice, released.
Okay, I'm leaving. Nice to have been here. Thank you, Jaswinder. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, Taylor.
Release means responsibility. It means
Wow.
you're free to continue on this topic as long as you like, okay?
Okay.
I might have a few questions, if it's interesting. One, it's been mentioned science. One question is, have we ever seen real science, or have we sort of seen something that aspires to it in very limited, incomplete form so far? So that organized science, you know, through the academic system, is maybe something that strives towards it, but it's still very far from really a very intelligent organization of what we call the scientific method. So, well, knowledge, of course, yes. So, what do you think, Jaswinder? Have we seen real knowledge in the world?
I'm of the opinion that the early sciences, such as when we started investigating diseases in localities, cholera, smallpox, cowpox, etc., and the first vaccines were made and used, and there were real results. That was science without political interference. And as time went on, politics started interfering with science, which is what happens today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's not real science anymore,
No.
is it?
No, it's corrupted.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting to, because I feel that what we're calling science is some kind of very degenerated version of something that could have been really awesome.
Yep.
And just totally fact-based and building from our experience and being totally united with everything you described today.
Well, I would like to hear Colin's opinion on that one.
Yeah, that would be great to hear what you think about that, Colin. What I'm asking is, like, have we seen real science before? Have we seen science at a really pure level, pure science? Have we ever seen that? I don't think we have. I think it's sort of like an aspiration. We've sort of moved some baby steps in that direction, but it's so far away from what we could achieve.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I think first of all, we are animals, so we're endowed with what we're endowed with. Not everybody's born the same. So there's a few animals who humans, you could say, who go on to aspire to collect what we consider knowledge, build intelligence, and it all comes down to experimenting, I guess, which I think is a fundamental thing. Every time you take a breath, you're experimenting in life, whether you know it or not. If the air is bad, you've just experimented yourself into a bad situation, and if it's fatal, that's the end of the situation. I don't think there's any continued transfer of knowledge package like Sam was talking about, although it's really good science fiction and very good storytelling. So pure, I think the pure is almost an unattainable idea. Just like,
well, okay, more like, could we humans, do you think, collectively evolve really
well, you're into
science?
I think
could we evolve brilliant science?
Okay, well, if you want to just say we're all going to be scientists and not concerned about any other aspects of
of being, then some crazy things could happen, I'm sure.
Well,
But
well, I would think that it has to then be something that's integrated with our whole being, right? So I'm
well,
thinking,
what I'm
what if
saying
we
is
like had,
integrated with politics, because politics,
and
be it corrupt or politics, be it corrupt or not, is the art of trying to govern a population for better.
yeah, exactly. So what if we like
So
have science that's
but hold
integrated
on,
with
what does
everything?
science have in its desk drawer? Or what does governance and politics have in its desk drawers? It has all of the problems, all of the wicked
Yeah.
problems, and all of the super wicked problems.
But
So
what if we did
it's
it
not like
differently,
you
right?
can say well, let's take the next 2 millennia and solve this problem. Something
Yeah, but
similar to that. It did
why do
happen
we
once.
have to have a problem? So why do I have to have a problem? Why can't we
Hold
just
on.
do something?
Hold on. There's always a need and a solution. Nothing is going to happen other than pure luxury of desire to study something. There's always a need. There's a funding. There's a time limit, right? There's all of these things when you start to get into the nuances of actually doing something. To sit and philosophize is great, but when it turns into science, you're actually doing it. And there's all kinds of constraints in life. And so your purity is disrupted by these constraints. So if you can get rid of as many constraints as possible, then maybe you could do something amazing. But yes, the whole idea of crowdsourcing is an amazing idea. Some people in this group, their whole idea is a crowdsourced idea. But
So could we like co-create a brilliant science, you think, Colin? Like, could we like just evolve together a science that's just on a totally new level?
No,
Why not?
you can't.
I want to try.
Let's
test it. Let's test it really good.
Who is we? We are
all humans, all human beings.
It's conflicting interests.
Or some, those who want.
Listen, conflicting interests. That's what we
No,
have.
It doesn't have
Let
to
me
be
give you an example.
interests.
Let me give you an example of a kind of a scientific miracle. You ready?
Yeah.
Now there's all kinds of political rah-rah involved in this, but when the United States said, we're going to the moon, come hell or high water, we've picked a very difficult thing. People are going to die in trying to do this. Like some scientists are going to actually die. So get your lab coat on and get ready because we're going to the moon. It's like, and they did that, but everybody couldn't stop and say, okay, now we're all going to Jupiter. Like that'd be like going into COVID for like 7 years straight, right? So there's constraints of what you can put into something. And that's what really, I look back and I see people who complain about the government, minus all the corruption of animals. But, the government is trying to do the thing it's supposed to do. You have to have some faith in humanity, right? It's not all annihilation.
Of course, and you're a human.
Okay, so how much money or how much resources does the government have to solve how many problems? And I think the ratio is way more problems to resources. So you have to pick winners and losers. And that's where you get into your choice. Well, if science could only work on this, that's fine, buddy, but we don't have money for that. We have to bust kids.
Well, what if we could do it differently?
We got mental illness to solve.
Yeah, but what if we could do it differently? What if we could create a new science? I'm not talking about, I'm saying, what if we could create a new science?
Go ahead, but I'm saying it's not going to be holistic and it's not going to be as pure as you think. That's my speculation.
What if we decide?
Who is we and what is what? Who is we and what are you talking about?
Whoever decides.
Well, whoever is nobody.
Okay, me then. Okay, here's the idea. What if some people develop and evolve science that's on a higher level than anything that's ever been seen
Well,
before?
science isn't really a noun as much as it is a verb.
Oh, I know, yeah, it's a verb. Also, yeah, of course, it's something
Actually,
we do.
I think
we do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so the reason you do it is because it fits into a context of solving or knowing for some practical reason. Usually for a practical reason. Now, the stuff Jazz was getting in today was kind of like soul science, if you ask me. And the practical reason might not be right there. And is there even a soul? Well, I don't even think it's worthwhile answering the question whether there's a soul or not, because there is something that we feel that we're highly emotional about. There is, and I think the word Sam used gets us really close. What was that, Anthony or Syntony?
Syntony, yeah. Yeah,
Syntony,
that's
yeah.
a good word.
I think that is the feeling. Like there's also that feeling you get when you're in a crowd, right? That mob, the crowd feeling and the crowd effect. And I think people feel that in church, and I think they feel that when certain music is played, and I think they feel that when they see their grandbaby. And I think, you know, there's these things that people could say, oh, I have merged with that thing. Like, and you watch Joe Rogan, they have several shows on talking about going to a higher enlightenment through DMT and all these different things. And so, you know, in fact, Joe Rogan's a whole world
And they've
of its
had
own.
some
I was watching
amazing experiences.
yeah, and this morning I was watching him, and it was about the fact that aliens may have come and changed our DNA at various times during our progress.
Maybe even aliens
So, you know,
are like from the multiverse that we contact through the mind. That's also one of them.
I actually have more belief in aliens than I do in a supreme being. But anyway, we'll just leave it there.
Well, yeah, but Colin, wouldn't all the aliens be the supreme being?
No.
I mean, it's a very simple idea. If we
No. You can't have a definition that can morph into anything you need at any one time. That's like a wild card in playing cards. It could be any card you want.
Okay, so here's the question. Let's say I consider all the whole universe, the whole with everything included, and the multiverse, and whatever is there, and I don't pretend to know anything about it, but whatever is there, that is what I begin from, right? And what if I look at knowledge, the kind of tools of knowledge we've developed so far, and then from that, what would be the best knowledge tools? Let's say that we developed a science that's on an incredibly high level, and it's holistic, and it's in conjunction with everything we've discussed today, everything Jazz brought. It's something that adapts to everything, and it uses the real deep scientific principles in ways that are just brilliantly much better than anything we've tried before. So what if we could evolve that together and evolve a new knowledge? And what if maybe these kind of conversations we're having now is the way we can do that? Because we explore new possible pathways.
Are you leaving any we's behind when you're going to this utopia?
Any what?
Any other people behind?
No, if it's a utopia, every person has to be included. So if anything deserves to be called a utopia, it has to be a situation where every person in the world can really have a good situation, that we can have harmonious coexistence.
I guess that's why I like Sam's idea of coexistence more than I like the idea. More than utopia.
But I think this is about the same thing, right? Because we're talking about the possibilities of coexistence. We're talking about what if we had a beautiful coexistence? What if we could figure that out?
Well,
let's try.
Come on.
Let's look at who have succeeded.
How about we try to stamp out racism?
Yeah, we transcend all that bullshit. That's just reducing living beings to category. That's bullshit. Living beings are multidimensional worlds.
Okay. Well, what fuels racism and bigotry?
It's the limitations of thinking. It's just a habit. Stupid
So
habits.
how do you approach enhancing the limitations of thinking?
Well, that's what I'm trying. What if we could come in contact with just what we know for sure, present level experience, what we can see, what we can touch, what we know for sure to be true.
Okay.
What if we begin from that, and then we begin to look at the possibilities?
Let's do a little. You can help me through this thought experiment. So I'm in the vein of coexistence. Okay. So you get people with two different worldview. Okay. And they're both pretty strong in their worldview. What would you, and their worldviews are in conflict as well.
Are they?
What, well,
Why are
I'm
they
just saying,
conflict? The two
because
worldviews,
their
both are
worldviews.
brilliant.
Hold on. Can you think of two worldviews that are in conflict?
I don't see why there has to be conflict. It's two worldviews. It's two people.
Christianity,
They have
Christianity.
their
How about the two I know? Christianity and atheism. Atheism is a worldview in as much as it just doesn't believe what it doesn't see anything in Christianity. But to make it a fair, hold on, to make it fair to get past square zero, the atheist would have to pick a worldview, and I would say personally, I'd pick humanism. So me, as an atheist with a humanist worldview and a fundamental Christian with a worldview that they are chosen people who are beyond human beings. They are actually magical beings. They're not animals. They're animals plus. If you tell a fundamentalist they're an animal, they take great offense. They say, we're not animals, and they look at apes and stuff. But yes, we're evolved from mushrooms. Yes, we are.
Yeah, we were evolved
Okay,
creatures, right?
so
but
so
the point is,
my hold on, Glenn. That's the question. How do you bring this utopia together with me thinking that I came from a mushroom and these people thinking they came from God? How can we reconcile that? Because it actually changes the way that people conduct their day. Because it's what I teach my children. Do I teach my children go to church and believe that man in the robe and do what they say and read this book, or do I say think for yourself and be skeptical?
Exactly. So I'm hearing your question. That's a good question. I really want to try to give a good response to that, because you're asking how could we reconcile these people who have these different worldviews and who see this issue so differently. So one person says, I want to think for myself. Yeah,
how do we coexist? But hold on.
Yeah.
Think, what's the motivations?
The motivations? Okay. So what are the motivations? Hold on.
Of the Christian is to change me into a Christian.
Well, let's not speculate.
Add that. No. That's
you don't know him.
It's part of the religion. It's part of the religion.
No, you don't know that. You don't know Callan. You don't know him.
Hold on. How about this one? Let's switch it to Muslims. I was a Muslim, and now I want to leave the religion. Say I was a Muslim believer. Hold on. Just say I was. Hold on. Say I was a Muslim, and a fundamentalist Muslim, and I want to leave the religion. I become an apostate, and they basically, in their religion, it's okay to kill me. Go for that one.
Well, that's a stupid idea, but I'm not talking about that in any case.
That are the constraints that your utopia are going to have to deal with.
Well, what if we created a system which could adapt to people exactly as we are, with every perk included, with freedom to create and co-create, with a peaceful organization, with effective resource distribution, with all people actually coexisting in a good way, where all these worldviews are seen as different points of view, which all point back to the same big situation, which we don't have any name for, but it's just simply what you could call reality, truth, this moment, whatever it is. So why not try? I mean,
I think we do.
We have the tools. We have the tools now to be able to do not the old philosophy. What if we take philosophy to totally new levels? What if we explode the roof of philosophy? We can do that now. We have databases, we have the internet, we have all these ideas, we have all these and we can listen to truthful, honest people like we've done today, who share their best understanding, and we all think about it together. And the truth
we don't represent everybody. There's some people who would not be able to last this conversation through.
Of course.
And I'm almost one of them.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, basically, it's just a simple question. Why can't we humans begin to explore some bigger possibilities?
Some of us can, not all of us. Some of us can.
This is what I want to do.
And then they form a country,
science.
and then they form a country, and they say this is the way we do things here, and they make laws, and then they put up their borders, and they become political.
But that wouldn't be super science. Super
Well,
science would be
I think
endlessly
that's
improving.
I
It
think
would
the
be
constraints.
endlessly recreating
I think,
itself.
but that's what I'm proposing, Glenn, is the constraints of the animals that we are
Well, we don't
at
know
a
our
certain level.
possibilities. Our brains are
Hold on,
pretty brilliant creations.
I just think there's so much diversity, Glenn. Like like our societies are like. So they're going to do what they find to be right. Who is going to give you credibility with your idea over their God?
Well, I don't have to, because it's an evolutionary process. We don't.
But they
know
might say
what's
no.
gonna
They
happen.
might have to say no. You have to perform these rituals at this time, and you can't be off there dilly-daddling fishing for for
That's
trout
not
over
what
there.
they're saying. They're saying
Oh,
they've
yes, they are.
experienced this. They've experienced this. That's what they're saying. Here it's something valuable. I think there's something big here. And
Okay.
nobody knows
Here's one for you.
everything.
Okay, forget about bigotry and those. How about the war on drugs? What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think it's been a disaster. The drug policies. I think it's a total fiasco. And
Okay. How about the education system? How about the education system?
Well, they've tried their best and they've done some good things, but it's so far away from what it could be. I mean, we could have education. We could have education that educates children to be the best versions of themselves, that can really be adapted to their needs, that can have high quality information. We could take it to totally new levels.
Well, what you propose, the place I see that being born is in universities.
Right? Yes, but at the moment the universities are restricted because they have the culture of the different groups, the different concepts, the different disciplines, and then there's the money, and then it's the reputation and ego, and that is why.
And how would that ever change?
Exactly, but that's what the point is. That how would that would make it not real science, right? It would
but the thing is, you're going to be doing this in a realm where you're going to have many groups of people who aren't so open-minded as you are.
Of course, yeah, and we have to adapt to people as.
So you do what they do, or you do what they do, or you go away. That's your choices.
Well,
you don't get them to do what you're doing.
Your thing, but you can kind of do your thing, and then you will meet who you will meet, and whatever will happen. But you taking responsibility for doing your best. So,
okay, let's go to Scientology then. You and I will sign up, and we'll change them from the inside out. How's that?
Sounds like
it's just
a very
not
demanding project.
Yeah, it's like these. Yeah, I'm just saying, like your ideas are great.
My battles. I have
so where do we go? Where do we go from here? Like, where do we go from here? And like, how do we pull Jazz into this? Because Jazz was talking about without the religion, but definitely he's talking about people being enlightened. I don't know if everybody can or want to, or I just have this feeling.
Deliberate, right? I'm just talking about possibilities. I'm just saying that there is the possibility that we could go into a kind of exploration similar to what we're doing today, where we discover some unknown possibilities and some truths that we haven't considered so much before, and maybe some truths that maybe many others have known about all the way. So, I mean, I think none of us are a total relativist. We think there's certain universal constants, right? So there's
well, I think there's catalysts to change. And sometimes it's somebody who comes across who thinks totally different. Like Einstein, he gets a lot of credit for not being academically genius, but having a way of sitting and dreaming and thinking and putting stuff together. So there's the catalyst, a person, or you could get an event, like, for example, COVID. We have enough knowledge now to know how to perhaps best react, but it causes sacrifice, and you can't have a utopian COVID, right? So but you can notice that things and thoughts are changing. A lot of people are saying, hey, we can run our business online.
like psychologists and psychiatrists and or
But
medical
why
workers.
can't we think bigger then? Why can't
Well,
we
I'm saying
just
a
all,
catalyst. It's a catalyst
yeah.
that comes in, and I don't know
It's
what
like,
this
why are we
catalyst.
talking about all that petty stuff? And that's
Well, I'm thinking
why
the
when we
catalyst.
could sort of,
I'm just thinking the catalyst you would need for the utopia you're talking about is like a nuclear bomb.
I don't
Like a
know what I'm
complete restart.
talking about. I'm just
A
asking a
complete
question.
restart.
I
I
don't
don't
know
even think
what
that would work.
I
I
don't know
don't even
what
think that
that
would work.
would look like. Okay, I'm not saying I would. I don't know anything about what it would look like. I'm just saying that there's a field of possibility, and we have an incredible number of possibilities. And if one was to decide at some point to create something in the world, which is really good,
I
then
create things. I create
yeah,
things.
you create things. We all create things every moment, and
What do
maybe
you
that
mean?
is. It's kind of like, let's say that what you just said is like a seed that is planted in the world, and there's a wisdom behind what you said. And if you sort of follow the threads, you could find it. But then
Well,
maybe
that's
sometime in the
that's what
future,
jazz is saying. That is what
yeah,
jazz is saying. You plant
sometimes in the
seeds and they.
future, maybe somebody could find it, and somebody could contemplate over it, and this could be meaningful information. And thus, perhaps our understanding can evolve over
Yeah, but
time.
that's evolution. You're talking about an evolution of understanding,
Yes,
really.
exactly. That's a great term, evolution of understanding. So that's
That
what
is
I'm talking about.
what's happening, but it's being filtered, or you could say guided and filtered
by habit, old habits.
Well, by different ideas of what could be in the best case, what could be better. In the gaming sense of the word, what gets somebody more, and I think that's what, if you got rid of the greed, I think greed comes in and filters things. You also have ignorance filtering things, and I think 90% of what I heard Jazz talking about kept coming back to me, like Jazz is a great storyteller. He's telling a story, and he's taking stories that he's heard, and he's putting his own pieces in there, perhaps, and which he says he doesn't have any pieces that are his own, but I think the way he puts them together is his unique way of presenting it. And there's as many different versions of that as there are jazzes, and mine's different. And I think this utopia you're looking for is getting less and less likely.
I'm not really looking. Okay, let's hear from
because people
I'm
are
not
starting
really
to think
for
more
one
and more.
Utopia. I'm sort of more looking for, what if we could create something that opens up a possibility of creating eventually some kind of utopia among an infinite spectrum of possible utopias. So it's not restricted to any shape.
Well, what is Sam's? What is Sam? Sam is doing that in a practical way.
Sam's been talking.
He's looking for a group of perhaps around 300,000 people. I think he thinks he could keep in a collective. If his idea grew out of this barn raising and it took off, and we could find a way to coexist and deal with these constraints, and
that could be part of the utopia.
And I could challenge you on things that matter, things that are affecting me,
we all
affecting
challenge
people.
each other. We all
Things
learn
that you
together.
believe, things that you believe that don't affect me, I don't challenge those, and that I think is the secret to coexistence, because I got to give you room to grow.
Well,
at
you
the
can
same
kind
time,
of acknowledge them, and you can then ask questions and challenge in other ways, and we all learn.
Yeah. So in that's not everybody though. We can't have. I don't know. One of the things we're trying to get to is, can we have a single tiered structure, or do we have to have at least a 2-tier structure where you have like a council of elders, or wise men, or a lot of indigenous groups have always had their council of elders of some sort, and that's basically what our modern day government is.
Yeah.
Although it's so far removed from the tribe that there's we're dealing with wicked problems. Look it up. When I say wicked, the world, I don't mean evil. I mean so difficult we don't know the solution. Look up wicked problems in Wikipedia.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So let me attack this. What if we try to do this as simple as possible? what if we consider it as systems of people who are physical beings in space, and they're interacting and they're having communications, sending signals, they're moving from place to place, and these signals between the people, these give the information of what's happening now, and that from this we could at any point just become really anything we want among an enormous number of possibilities. And
I don't see any of that. I'm sorry. Like, I do see people, I do see that happen naturally every day, but in order to make a mastermind super system that controls how people go here and there and what they're saying and what they're,
what if we make a system that doesn't
small versions of that are called companies.
I know.
I work for one, and I'll tell you what, it's a system, and it works well.
But what if we create a system that doesn't control anything? It just creates an endless number
Then
of
expect entropy. Expect entropy.
Well,
expect the field to grow to weeds if you don't mow it.
Well, what if we create new knowledge that's far better than anything that's been before, and it also builds on the best traditions from different people in different places?
With what resources? The constraint is the resources, though.
Yes, the computers, we use the hard drives, we
desire
store it. Yes,
desire.
We include all our experiences, all our information. We include all
there
our
is no we, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, at the level this group is talking about.
The people.
Right.
The physical beings in space, we, the people, the living beings who live in space on planet Earth. That's what I'm talking about.
Is that not a democracy? Is that democracy?
It is what it is. Democracy is just one way of looking at it. It is what it is. It's a continuous global event where.
So who pays for the potholes in the road, or do we just stop driving cars?
We all pay.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
We're part of like this global. I feel we like call this global event.
Some people are left behind in the system that we've chosen.
I know. And
they're not part of the economic engine.
And that's why it's a stupid system. And that's what I'm talking about. What if we create a system that's so clever that includes 100% of absolutely all living beings on planet Earth? What if we create a system?
I don't know.
What if
I think what we have, we can't have a system. We've got many systems that can coexist.
It's one system in any sense.
That's where I think the conversation is. I can't continue this conversation. I can't continue this conversation with one system. I see a series of systems that interact.
It's one system.
No, it's not.
And it's many systems, and it's all of those systems together. And the totality of all that is what I call the super system, which is
one in the news.
Everything.
Okay, one in the news I just heard about was Hong Kong. Mainland China is now way beyond their 50-year lease to Hong Kong. And they have a one party, what do they call it? One country, two systems, I guess. So the people in Hong Kong, they're more democratic. They got the freedom of whatever. There's 300,000 Canadians that live in Hong Kong. So, and the Chinese mainland is calling them, I think they actually called them a derogatory name like vermin or rats or something, because they want to impose their laws. So it could be actually this Thursday, they could change the laws in Hong Kong so that you do what we say or get the fuck out of here, or we're going to kill you or whatever. And this is what I'm talking about, Glenn. These are the real constraints.
I know.
You can't go in and tell China stop doing that. You can't go tell Saudi Arabia stop doing that. You can't go tell Canada to stop doing that.
So what you're saying then is that the constraint is the fact
the topic. And the constraints are the lines on the map that you have to learn to coexist with.
The constraints are how people are with their experience, with their baggage. The constraint is just the people as they
What you
are,
got to work with, what you got
and
to
what
work
you
with.
ask, what you
The
got
reality,
to work with,
reality,
the
for better or
reality.
worse, whether they brought it there because they believed in a God or whether they brought it there
I know.
because they believed in whatever.
I know. Then I understand. And this is where I'm simply, the reason I'm saying all this is I'm just asking this question. I'm now putting this question out because I feel it's a super interesting question. And it's this question: what would knowledge at an incredibly high level, what would that be like? What would science be like, let's say, in 1,000 years? It evolves for 1,000 years, and we use artificial intelligence, we use co-creation, we use intuition, we use all of the people with all of their weird things together, and we just create something that's so far beyond anything before. What if we could do that? That is the idea that just seems like such an interesting thing to look at. Is that actually possible? Because if it is, that could solve everything. Like, that could literally create paradise at best. I mean, what would prevent it?
I guess I'm just not a utopian thinker, Glenn. I'm sorry.
Okay, but why not try then? If it doesn't work, then we'll know.
I'm too skeptical. I'm too skeptical of the human beings. Oh, I think Jazz just took off. Oh, well.
So basically, it's like you don't trust us enough. Are we like up to this? Yeah, that's a
It's
good
not that I
point,
don't trust.
Colin.
It's not that I don't trust people. I just know that there is no one person, and there's so much diversity and nurture nature. There's a lot of pain,
madness, and a lot of pain.
a lot of unfairness, a lot of disease.
It is a mess. It's a mess. Yeah, it is.
It is. It is. Yeah.
So,
and so when you talk on the, so it's almost
here
like
we
in order
totally
to,
agree, Colin. We would totally agree.
So it's almost like your number one priority is to keep your family and friends and acquaintances in a stable, friendly, safe position.
Yeah.
Try to, I think, the syntony. Try to perform syntony. I think in your own circles of influence.
Yeah, get a harmonious relationship.
And I think at the same time, be leery of people coming with their big dreams of some magic syntony that's going to solve everything. And I hear a little bit of that in your speech, but I definitely hear that in religions of the past. And I was speculating if there wasn't a practical reason for that to satiate the people where there is all this fear and pain. And I think in the beginning, a lot of the churches were kind of the places where early humanity started to care more about the people at large and groups of people, and maybe bring in some of the early sciences and perform some
care
of these
more
things.
for all the people, for their traditions, for who they were, and include them and learn with them. What if they did that?
But when they start looking at books and calling them dogma and saying you must, I feel that puts unnecessary constraints on things. And if there is a lesson to be learned, then yes, take that and promote it. But it doesn't have to have the baggage of, or we will send you to hell or whatever. Christianity is all full of threats.
But nobody's made that claim. Nobody's made that claim today, Paul. Okay. So there's a lot. We haven't been anywhere close to that today. I mean, that's just
no. But I'm just saying. We live in that history, and you can't just snap your fingers and say forget about it.
Yeah, we have it.
They won't.
Us, it's like
there's still a lot of people. There's still a lot of people who believe in things just because they're told them, and because from authorities that they trust.
Yes.
And and it affects their day. Whether they live that way day to day is one thing, but if you try to challenge them to say, "Oh, let's build a science lab that will do some of what Glenn wants," they'd say, "You're not doing that in our town. God won't allow that kind of thing." What I really like is when it comes back on them, because I shouldn't say really like it, but it's quite instructive.
I think some religious groups were trying to have a lot of monuments and things put into public buildings, and have children do prayers, and they would put things on the hand things out in the schools to kids, pamphlets of whatever. And so whenever that happens now, there's anti-groups that represent religions that you wouldn't want to teach kids, that have just as much right to be handed out. So if you can hand out your pamphlets, we can hand out our pamphlets, because that's fairness, right?
So what if we like created a new religion, like just an improved version of it? And I'm not saying that we needed to be attached to it. I'm just saying,
I think that's called Buddhism and Taoism.
I know, yeah. So what if we like created
humanism
it and tried it as an experiment?
How about we get rid of the idea of religions and start getting a hold of the idea of better?
Yeah, we could call it anything we want, but what if
it isn't a thing though. I'm against these big groups. I'm against these big groups. I just don't think that they can hold reality for individuals.
But in a sense, we're all one group in any case, right? So we always have to coexist with everybody
no,
else.
Not one group. I think the only people that are one holistic group, the only people I know with all the same properties that fit the definition of a category is atheists, because you don't have to do anything to be an atheist.
Just a stupid word.
Well, it's just all it means is you're alive and you don't believe that there's supernatural things that are going to do stuff for you.
And they don't have any idea what you mean by supernatural, because if it wasn't natural, then it wouldn't exist. So what does that even mean? I mean, if it existed, it would per definition be natural.
For example, if the religions were all lined up in a row of their greatest speakers, and an atheist is sitting at the table, and the religious guy says, here's our book, this is what we believe, this is what you get, this is what we get from you, this is how it works, this is how your life will be enhanced. The atheist state, next. And that's all that an atheist would have in common with another atheist. They just don't believe in the hoopla.
So they don't believe in
the claims that are being made. They don't see any reason to believe the claims that are being made. That's it.
So does that mean is that the claim about God?
Until they do, but an atheist is still searching, I guess.
So what would be proof of God?
Well, I don't know, but it hasn't appeared. That's the point.
Are you sure about that?
Well, an atheist is not convinced. Yes.
Okay,
not convinced.
What would make you convinced? What would convince you?
I don't know. Here's a question: would the person who wanted to convince me know what that is?
Maybe not. I have no idea.
Well, then it won't be very convincing.
I'm just saying that what would convince you of the existence of a higher intelligence or a God?
Well, I've heard that question asked a lot of times, and I think previously, I could have gave some glib answers about writing in the sky, or some, the stars aligned to some, say my name and my birthday and how much all the astronomers in the world say. I don't know how these stars lined up, but there they are, millions and millions of light years away, and they're spelling your name. But that's all glib. The real answer is that all being, all knowing, whatever it is, should know what it needs to tell us. And to think that it could put it, in fact, in Christianity's case, into a scripture of 2,000 years ago and say, oh, we did it, that's good enough. We can just leave all the confusion and contradictions and don't need to say any more. We'll just divinely speak to a few people from here on out. And that's just not my example of somebody who is a supreme being. That's somebody who's failing at being a supreme being.
I get that, because they just have their subjective experience, right? So,
right. Well, that's what I'm saying about jazz. Same thing with jazz. Same thing.
But jazz only made a few claims today, and most of them I think were correct. He was well grounded.
No, he was well done. But I'm saying he made claims, whether he realizes it or not.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm just trying to understand this one simple question, and that is, if somebody mentions, I don't see any evidence of a God, then I have to know, what do they mean by evidence? What would be evidence for them?
Okay, well let's go back.
What would convince you of a God?
Okay,
it's a simple
let's
question.
Go back one.
What would convince you?
Okay, let's go back one step before that, because I think that question is asked in bad faith.
No,
don't
I'm
mind the
asking
pun.
it in good faith. I really
No,
want
it's
to
not, it's
know.
not in good faith because of the
I
fact of the
do.
pun. Well, you think it is,
No,
of course.
I want to understand this. If it's
Yeah,
right,
but if you're
it's right.
colorblind and you're telling me that a certain color is a color it's not, I'm sure you're trying to believe that it is, but it's not. So this is what I'm
I'm
saying.
not
We back
trying
up.
to believe anything. I'm trying to find out what's true here. I'm just asking a question. But
Okay,
it's
let's
a
go back.
simple question. How
It's a
could
question,
we
but it's
recognize it?
it's on thin ice, that question. It's not on solid ground. Let me put the question on solid ground for you, if you would.
Yeah. Begin
Okay,
from
that's
there.
what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say. That's not a good question because it's asked, maybe not in bad faith and bad knowledge. How about that? The knowledge that I'm saying you're missing is this. If you or somebody wants to tell me they have some magical thing like a dragon in their garage, and they got books that says there's a dragon in their garage, that doesn't mean there's a dragon in their garage. And
of course,
if I say, okay, what does it take for prove that there's a dragon in my garage? I say, okay, show me. And so they bring me over to the garage, and I look in the garage, and they say, oh, but did I tell you my dragon is invisible? And then you see where this is going, on and on and on. So
I get that. I get that.
Okay, so here's the point. Here's the point. Here's the point. You're asking me to prove a negative, which can't be done.
Well, I'm just asking you if that would even be a meaningful. Okay, let me rephrase it then.
I don't know what it would take
to
prove a negative.
be a meaningful question? Would it even be a meaningful question to ask for evidence?
What would it take for you to believe in fairies, Glenn? What would it take for you to believe in fairies or Sasquatch?
Well, depends what you mean by fairies, but it would all come
Sasquatch.
from my own.
How about Sasquatch?
experience.
How about Bigfoot?
It would come through my experience, my senses, my information about the world, and.
But that doesn't mean anything to me.
Maybe not. No.
So
but the question I'm asking about is simply, if there was a higher intelligence, how would we recognize it? Like, how would we even see signs?
How should I know? How should I know?
That's how I feel too, because I don't know.
Okay, same thing about fairies. How come you're not worried about the fairies that are going to come and steal all the stuff from you?
Because I don't know what fairies are. Because I don't know what they are. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's an idea. It sort of points a finger at something transcendent, and then it says, "Don't look at the finger.
Any different?
Look at the."
How's that any different?
Well,
how's that any different from what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that. Well, what I think I'm getting to is that if there really was a higher intelligence or a higher force of some kind that interacted with us, then I would have to expect that I wouldn't necessarily even recognize it. I mean, it might be very strange. It would probably be totally different from anything I expect. So we don't have to pretend, any of us, to know this, because we don't. We're all idiots in this respect. But at the same time, some people have had this direct experience with a contact with the divine light, what they call the divine light. But
that's called testimony.
Yes, and it comes from personal experience that
it has nothing to do with
many people have had.
Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. I'm an atheist, remember? You asked me what it would take for me to believe. I'm telling you that's not a realistic question, and you're proving it. Because there could be an infinite number of these supreme beings.
That's what I think it is. I think probably it is. I think probably it's an infinite number of beings on an infinite number of levels. And it's not even God.
There we can disagree, because I'm thinking it's in my mind, as far as I can see, 0. And you're saying it's near infinite. So there you go.
Well, it's not 0, because there is this universe. I mean, we agree on that.
No. We're not talking about universes. We're talking about supernatural beings.
Okay, so what would that be? I mean, how would I recognize?
How should I know?
Being?
It's the thing that all these people through mythology have tried to sell me, and I say I don't want any. They knock on my door. They say, I got a supernatural vacuum cleaner for you. It'll suck up all your problems ever, and it's the answer and all the rest of it. And I say, I don't want it.
Okay, so does this mean simply then that we can't even ever conceive of what something like that could be, because
And they're
we
trying,
just.
and they're trying to sell it like as if they have. That's
But
the
what? So
crime.
what you're reacting to is the people who pretend they know more than they do, right?
Well, I
Who
think
are dishonest.
I think
Hypocrites.
you're an honest version of it, I guess.
Well, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying, because I think we're all saying the same thing. I think we're all saying that we're kind of confused. It's a more complex reality than any of us knows. But there are perhaps signs that
So
it could
why are
be
we jumping
internet.
to conclusions? Why
We
are we
don't have
jumping to
to.
conclusions?
That's what everyone
Yes, we
has
are.
said. Well, we
Even
don't
think
have
that there's
to.
a high.
I know, but we don't
Hold
have
on.
to.
You just said you believe that there's an infinite number of higher powers, and I'm saying I believe there's zero.
Well, there is at least. Well, okay, so you mean like it's only one universe, and humans, we are the highest intelligence that exists?
No, I
Or
don't think we're the highest intelligence. Just look at what we do for activities.
exactly. So yeah, we agree on that. So
No,
okay.
what I'm saying is it's not a matter of intelligence. What is a matter of is existence.
Yeah.
We have a definition for existence. We have certain senses that we can perceive. We got crappy memories. You know, it's unknown whether there's any other things actually existing that has the consciousness to the level that we think we do. But the thing is where it goes wrong, where I think the story went wrong, is people made up mythology and said, you know, there's these spirits or these things.
Yeah.
You might actually feel like there is, and it might
But
be
I
informative
think
to you.
many agree
But for
with
me
you
to put
there,
it in a
Colin.
book, hold on, for me to put it in a book and then go across the world and try to sell it to people, ended up, in my mind, being extremely wrong, hurtful, arrogant.
And that's exactly what Jesus said as well, wasn't it? That's even written from Jesus, that he says you
So
get
maybe
confused by
part
the
of the
books,
story,
the living word.
hold on. The Bible could have all kinds of truisms in it. That doesn't mean that the Bible's true.
All of it, obviously not. I mean, it's a mythology, as you say. Yeah, it is.
But I'm saying within mythologies, like for example, Harry Potter was a mythology.
Yeah,
but there is a London, England, where they've shot it, or wherever they were, right?
Of course,
or Transylvania. I don't know where they shot it, but you know,
of course.
There's people who play actors in movies who play a role, but when they leave the movie set, they're not that role anymore. I explain it this way the best I can, and then I think this is the last thing I have to say about it, is that it seems to me that people have a need to believe. And I think, you know, I can understand that.
Yeah, exactly. An
Whether
attachment to belief.
They have
attachment to belief.
And where you can see it evolve is with in our part of the world. I don't know if Santa Claus is all around the world, but kids believe in Santa Claus, and I think that a lot of the gods are similar to that. The only difference between them is that we stop believing in Santa Claus at some point in time, where the other ones keep
stop
going.
pretending to know. We can say, I have these ideas, I have these hypotheses, I have these mythologies. We don't have to pretend that we know.
You're asking me what knowledge I could gain to believe in a higher power, and I'm telling you that's a ridiculous question.
Yes, thank you, and I agree. That's the point. I was wondering if you really felt that way as well. I didn't want to impose my idea, but that happens to be what I think too. That we couldn't ever even conceive of it. So as a question, it doesn't actually make sense because we don't have any notion of what we're asking about.
To people. It is an important question to people who come from the mindset that there has to be something.
Well, you believe there is something more than this.
I don't.
Well, I certainly do. That there's something more than this, but I don't know what that is. And
the point is, I think that we may agree that no matter what you say, there's no reason why I should believe it, because you don't have enough evidence. No, it's not.
That's where we agree there.
No. And if you have a great knowledge, surely I would like to learn that. But if I have no reason to believe it, then maybe your knowledge isn't as confident or warranted as you think it should be. At least for me. You might say this is good rules for me, but you know, take it for what it's worth, you know, for yourself. See, that's the thing. And these religions start to say, well, you know what? You should believe this, or you're not going to have jobs in our town, or you're,
So
you know.
what you're saying is the problem is they pretend to know, right? They
The
pretend
problem
to
is,
know
no, the problem
something
is
they
they
don't
make
know.
politics out of it. The problem
And
is they
make
make
politics,
politics.
yeah. So
That's
then
the
it's the
problem.
pretense problem, isn't it?
Well, no, but we live in a society now where in most, what I would call civilized democracies, which is a stretch of words, we have a separation of the secular and the religion. So
Yes,
therefore,
I know.
there
The
was a time
dualisms.
when people could go in and say, I saw that person, you know, twitch in their eyes, and then a bunch of my sheep died, and therefore they're a witch, and they killed my sheep, and I think we should burn them. That stuff happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I
I
said,
know.
you know.
But I'm just trying to look forward here, Colin. That's why
And if
I'm
you
bringing
take
up
your
these
philosophies,
questions.
if you take your philosophies to that sheep farmer and think that you're going to get anywheres with, oh, we should all make a new world, you're going to see the contradiction that I'm talking about. Whereas with Synonymous idea,
In this philosophy here, I would ask the sheep farmer, who are you? What's your situation? What you need? And we'll
do you
have
think
a
he's got
system.
time to listen to you with all the work he's got to do? He might tell you to come back when he's not so busy, and maybe
Okay, then we
maybe
could.
what if he gives you 5 minutes? Like, this is what I'm saying, real world scenario, Glenn.
Yeah, well, then we would want to have a system that adapts to that person as that person is,
So
exactly as we are.
really, we're talking about your desires here, and you're trying to convince me of something, I think. And
No,
I thought,
I'm only saying that there is a possibility of creating something totally new, and I don't know what that is. That's all I'm saying. Let
well,
me
why
be
don't you
super
pick
clear.
something? Why don't you pick something and work on it?
I've already mentioned several possible versions of what it could be, but the main thing I'm saying is, as far as I can tell, we don't know anything for sure, but at the same time, everything could be considered possible.
Well, hold on. I don't agree with that. We don't know anything for sure.
We know many things for sure.
I know we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. That's pretty sure.
I know, we do. Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we know many things for sure, and at the same time, it's more that exists than what we know, because our knowledge is
that shouldn't stop us in our tracks and make us unable to move forward. We have to make an educated move.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to get at. So what would an educated move be? How could we learn together?
That depends on the context. And what I'm saying is, there's so many different contexts. You can't put everybody in the same boat, the same pool, the same ocean.
I don't have to. Okay, don't have to. What would a super context be?
We're already in it. We're already in it. And it includes ants and water buffalo, and it includes dogs and flies and Jupiter. It includes all kinds of things.
It is a super complex already, yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah, it is already.
It is already. That's what Josh was saying too when I talked with him about this. Yeah,
but
I think there is a common understanding here, Colin. I think we agree on much more than it seems. We're just using different words, but I think we're coming at the same thing. We're open. We don't pretend to know, but we're exploring some questions. And
and I think, and I'm also on the side, like this is close to the kind of the discussion we could have, although I would like it to be more organized, where people give their point, we move forward point by point like we did before. The discussion about religion, or the discussion about, even the discussion could even be to include your points of view, what we think is better. Because people who
maybe
have
ask everyone, what would you think is better? We could ask everyone.
Yeah.
What's
your best worldview?
Yeah. Basically. What would be your perfect future? Let's see. You can ask everyone. What would be your dream? What's your biggest dream? What would you?
Well, yes and no. I think we could play that game maybe 1,000,000 times by picking a different context. So we can't play, and I think you're playing the game. You're playing the game with all the 1,000,000 games at once, and it's just not doable.
Well, I'm just exploring possibilities. I'm just
Well, let's pick one.
exploring.
That's what I say. Pick one. And
Okay, I'm looking for something that includes 100% where there's an effective coordination of resources, of units, where time is well spent, where the
well, the one I
conversations
picked,
are
I'll
good.
tell you the one I picked. For right now and for the unforeseeable future, I've picked barn raising. And why have I picked it? Why have I picked it? I picked it
it's
because,
really interesting stuff.
well, it's interesting, but the reason why I find it interesting is because there's some people here with some interesting philosophies that I think that are open enough to maybe yield some interesting results in the experiment. And the experiment, in my mind, is understanding, because until you can understand what you're dealing with, you aren't dealing with it.
Whoa, thanks, Colin. That was a gem. So, that, do we want to make that the last words?
Yes.
I totally support that.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
And where people don't care to understand, they just say, do it this way because that's the way I've been told. And if you don't, then you're going to suffer these consequences.
We're trying to understand it. That's what we're trying to do.
We're into the thing that I repel, which is authority or authority.
Yeah.
You know,
so
abuse of authority is what I'm saying.
We're making us free from that, and we're just exploring understanding. We're trying to improve our understanding. That's what we're doing in the barn racing calls. That's what I feel.
One has to realize that Sam has come to some maybe milestones, if not conclusions.
Exactly. He's got
we
so
cannot,
many gifts. And let's explore them. Let's look at them. Let's listen to them. Let's think about it. Let's all share our gifts.
Hold on. We can't move forward in a single tier structure because we can't align in a way where entropy doesn't ruin things. And I think a new lesson is coming that we have to follow through on these things. And my lesson is what's worth my time? I can't do this infinitely. And I feel like I've been wasting a lot of my time here because now it's turning into more of a social thing than an experiment. But I sense from what Sam has said and a few other people, you know, the social connection we have is secondary from the goal we have at barn raising.
I feel that the goal we have is very closely with this pursuit of understanding. That seems to be it.
Like we're
barn racing, we're leaning in and we're sharing ideas. We're sharing what we try to see as true and relevant. We're trying to be honest.
So here's the question. Here's the question. So even if I, as a person, would probably not naturally align with the way you and Jaswinder align today, how could I? If it's an important conversation and one worth having, not just a casual thing, it's none of my business otherwise.
Yeah.
So something that finds my business and I can say, you know, I think that this is important to me because, can we discuss it? And then how could we proceed to discuss that in a conversation without all of the human baggage destroying the conversation?
Well, what if we simply respect
Well, you
each
could just
other?
leave that as a rhetorical question because that's kind of what my maps are proposing to do.
Yes, exactly.
And they're doing it in an artistic way, not in a solution way. They're to show us where the constraints are. They're not the final design.
This actually does tie together. Yeah, it is, because the maps are like possibilities for journey, and it's really interesting stuff you're doing there.
Well, it's cognitive context evoking.
Yes, and I think that could go together with this idea I have about possible worlds, that we can imagine possible worlds that make time with imagineering.
That's my complaint. That's my complaint with a lot of these things that you're saying and Jazz is saying, is that they're just so big they have no context.
Well, they are visions of something.
What I mean is no handlebars, nothing. I could say pick it and do it, or pick one and do it. Like there is nothing.
Well, I would say that the doing is the formulation of the visioning. So it's a co-visioning work, basically. It's like we're we're describing possibilities, we're describing visions, and then we're
Right.
trying to put in more and more and refine the visions and say what is possible. So it's like this idea space about possibilities, and then we can think about that together, and at some time maybe some of them will turn out to really be helpful. I mean, we don't have to assume. We can be free, we can continue the research, we can be totally scientific. You can
Well,
be
I
you,
definitely
I
think
can be me.
I
Yeah.
think you're reminding me close to what what's his geez, it's been so long since I talked to him. Charles. I
Charles?
have to look him up. I think William
William.
William Charles Charlton. William Charlton, is that his name?
Oh yes, yes, William Charlton.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He and I was discussing this idea of having a way where people could put proposals in. And I was actually, if you remember, about a year ago, I was sampling different people, seeing, you know, what would be their proposal. And it was interesting because I come across Anna, and she said she didn't have a proposal. She just wanted connection.
Yeah.
So as you can see, there's different people want different things. So you need a unique way that people can be heard and feel part of things. So, you know, I think we're getting there with our mobile devices. I just don't know
Yeah,
if the
but
conversation
I just feel we need
COVID,
some more big ideas. I think it's
well, I think
such a
we
boring
need to be more serious.
conversation.
We need
And
more
serious.
seriousness.
But
And
if we're gonna be
for
serious,
example,
we have to come with some big ideas.
For example, COVID
Mm-hmm.
was a catalyst. So that's what I mean. If something's serious, to discuss it. And Lauren said they had a serious discussion between people who she was surprised they couldn't come to any kind of you know, agreement. And so those are what I'm talking about. Not can we find some utopia where everybody's taken care of and all the possibilities, like that. What you're talking about is just way up in the sky, too far for me to get any handlebars on.
Okay, but what if they don't have to agree on what the details are with the COVID? What if the only thing we have to agree on
They
is
don't have to
way
agree.
forward?
They
What
don't
if we
have to agree.
only exactly? What if we
She was
only agree on
surprised.
a way forward?
The thing that I noticed is that she was surprised.
So
Her
what if we
impression,
just agree
thought
on a
people
way
would.
forward?
Glenn, she thought people would agree more. That's
I
the
know,
point.
I know. And
Well, I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that, because what you just said when we first started talking would indicate to me that you think that everybody should agree more.
I'm not saying. I don't know. Did I say that?
Well, you were saying that, you know, we all. So that, yeah, that means that.
Well, okay. Well, let me put it differently. We're on our way. There's one way forward we're moving, and if we want to make an agreement, we could agree that we're gonna strive towards a system that works for everybody.
I think that's what we attempt. I think that's
yeah.
what we attempt in democracy, minus the corruption, minus the ignorance, minus the mental diseases, right?
A scenario where nobody has mental diseases, where we're happy, where it works, where it's harmonious.
I'll just say, there's just so many worldviews, so much variety. The best we can do is stick to our areas of influence, with backing up what we know and saying when we don't know. And if we want to get into the realm that we're into today in barn raising, of talking about all of these things, then it should be prefaced by the fact that these are my opinions and I have no reason why you should believe them. And then I think they're well deserved to explore. Like, there are things that I'm sure, I guess this is what I'm fighting against, Glenn. There's so many things we don't know. It annoys me when people are throwing things in as conclusions.
I know. I'm saying the same thing. Really, Colin. I'm saying the same thing. We don't have to have that conclusion.
Well, in order to have a religion, you kind of do.
Well, that's just a toolbox. We can use some of it, but we don't have to limit ourselves to
Tell that to the religions.
I'm telling
Don't tell that to me.
That's what I'm saying. I'm telling it to everyone. I'm telling it to whoever's listening here. I don't see any reasons why we have to limit ourselves to pretending we know anything more than we don't. We can say, I don't know anything, and from this, I will try to create something good, and we'll
Well, you
just
won't
see
get
what
any
happens.
sponsors. You won't get any sponsors.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
If you say you don't know, they'll say we don't have any money.
I think that's true. So I have to continue working with the master plan, but I'm thinking somewhere in the next 10 years, something will happen and something will come out. And
Well,
then
it's been a good back and forth, Glenn. I
it's
gotta
been
go
a good
now.
one, Colin, and it's really great learning, and I think it's really valuable, all of this. Pure bowl
All
knowledge.
right.
So anyway, have a good day there, brother.
I still think you're winning with the fact that there must have been something before, not nothing.
Yeah, I think it's always been going on. That's what it seems like. Yeah.
Who knows though? Who knows? Okay. We'll
We'll
see you.
Well, we'll see. Have a good
Bye.
one.